mean, like if you get in good with him, he can take you over you know, over the edge.
Yeah.
So then it was not only just with him, it was with him and then with this legend, Phyllis Hyman. So it's like the stakes were like on Gordon Chambers. But I had, I had a lifetime of preparation of, of music and, honing my craft to get ready for a moment like this. You know what I mean? They say about like 10,000 hours, I think.
Mm.
So that was that first recording session. And, Dave kind of like put us together, took a chance on putting us together. And then Phyllis was there and she recognized me because I used to sneak into some of her shows because
What?
she had a background singer named Eric Jones who passed away. I think it was Eric Jones. I think it was the last name was Derek. I had met him like at socially, and he knew I was a big fan, and like he would sneak me into sound. I mean, I was like, very young. I was making hardly any money, like fresh out of college. He would like sneak me in at halftime to like halftime to see the shows. So she actually recognized me.
She recognized that. She
Yes. When I got there, she started cussing her manager out. And guess who's here to write songs with me with Dave Hall? That kid who's always sneaking in with a wristband to my shows that Eric is always bringing to the show. He's here supposedly to write songs, help me write songs with Dave Hall. What was this? And
Oh.
like, this is like my first like, serious like session, quote unquote. And like Dave was like, she bugging Gordon. She's upstairs, like she went upstairs to make a call, and he starts looping this beat, and he said, "Do you hear anything? Do you hear anything to this track?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, and he started, "What do you hear?" Because he put me on the spot. I'm like, so it's letting it play for 3, 4 minutes, and the first lyric came to me was, "I can't take this confusion," because she had had a hit song called "Living in Confusion," and at the time there was confusion in the room.
Yeah, I like to start because we've got an international audience just to say, where you were born and raised.
Sure. I was born in the Bronx. No, I was born in the Bronx, New York, of Jamaican parentage, in the Northeast Bronx. Then, when I was 7 years old, we moved to a town called Teaneck, New Jersey, which was right over the George Washington Bridge, kind of a New York City suburb. Then I went to college in Providence, Rhode Island, Brown University, came back home, lived at home with my parents for 5 years, and then came to live in Brooklyn when I was 25. So I've lived in Brooklyn for 30 years. It's my 30th anniversary in Brooklyn and my kind of 30th kind of official year of sort of making an impact in the music industry in a big, you know, more known way. So
Okay.
30 years in Brooklyn. So I've lived in Brooklyn longer than I've lived anywhere else. So that's what feels like home. But I was raised in the Bronx and Teaneck, New Jersey.
T-Neck is the Isley Brothers had a record label called T-Neck. Is this the
Yeah,
same? Okay.
same town.
So okay, I just thought that was just the name. So they named it after. Are they from Teaneck?
They, I don't think they're from Teaneck. I'm not sure where they're from, but they moved to Teaneck, as did many other entertainers. There were quite a few growing up in Teaneck. Well, there are three towns that were next to each other: Teaneck, Hackensack, and Englewood, New Jersey.
Oh, I know Inglewood. Yeah, so like a lot of the
And
guys from Rift and some of the Blackstreet Boys today, Big Bob.
today,
Yeah, yeah,
Big
big.
Bub was a childhood friend of mine, and
Okay,
Bernard Bell and
Bernard
Regina
Bell.
Bell. They were from England.
Okay,
So those three towns, those were three of the towns in Bergen County that had more black, people.
okay,
And quite a few music luminaries lived in Teaneck. Growing up in Teaneck, Millie Jackson lived in walking distance from us.
wow.
Um, some of the guys from Kool and the Gang lived in walking distance of us. Many jazz musicians like Lenny White, um, Ray Barretto, um, a bass player named Rufus Reed, lived in Teaneck. Teaneck was a good place to live. Dizzy Gillespie lived in Inglewood.
Wow.
Those three towns in particular, but were good places to live if your children wanted to go to good public schools. And Teaneck was also the first town in America to voluntarily desegregate its school system. So
Wow.
And it was close to the city where, of course, the action was the nightclubs and the recording studios. There were also like some recording studios in Jersey, like Sugar Hill Gang, the birthplace of recorded hip hop, so to speak, was also located in Inglewood. And I think Inglewood, yeah, very close. I think it was Inglewood. So there was always a lot of local um, ghetto superstars, so to speak. So it made pursuing music a, a dream that felt achievable and tangible because there were people in the towns, who, such and such lives, down the street, blah, blah, blah. And their
Mm.
kids went to school just like us. The parents went to PTA meetings just like us. So it made pursuing being in music a sort of a not such a impossible dream. So it definitely made an imprint on me. And I also started, with public school, free public school lessons. So, back in those days when a lot of, kids had that exposure, unfortunately, they've taken so much of that out of
Mm.
school education, unfortunately. Yeah.
Was there any of your family parents into music, and how did you get the music bug?
My father, Byron Chambers, was a kind of hobbyist DJ. He played for lots of little local small nightclubs, small little social clubs more so, parties, mostly of the fellow Jamaican
Uh,
social, network. They'd have little social clubs. My father played cricket. So the fellow cricket teams would have these like Friday night dances, fundraiser dances. And Daddy was like a great DJ. And my parents also threw amazing house parties. My mother, Aunt Val to many, cooked a mean pot of curry goat, legendary pot of curry goat. I don't know if are you Jamaican? Are you
No,
Peruvian?
I'm Nigerian, but yes, yes,
So,
patties and curry goats and
yeah,
still
she was
fish and plantain and
known
beets. Yeah.
for that. So, mom was known to cook well, and daddy had this huge record collection. And so, my love of music became from my household. I came from a strong household of music lovers. Also,
Mm.
my father growing up was a Cadillac salesman. And so daddy always had new Cadillacs because you had to drive the car you were selling. He later on went and started selling insurance later on. But so we had lots of, the tunes that you wanted to like ride around in your 8-track listen to. So that was like a lot of the like sonic memories I can remember like vividly from the car. There's different music I remember like at the household, and then there's certain music I remember in the car. Like in the car, I can definitely all Bob Marley and the Wailers. Like Bob
Oh.
Marley was the first songwriter that I really remember hearing and paying a lot of attention to his craft of lyrics.
Mm.
Not the only, but I remember just because it was like, being Jamaican, Bob Marley in the 70s was like God. Um, so, but also, and like in the 8 tracks, I remember driving around with, for family outings, gatherings, and hearing like a lot of, Teddy, Pendergrass, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, a lot of the Philadelphia soul acts, Isaac Hayes, the Staple Singers, some
Mm.
Stax Records recording artists. But that was like the driving music. I can remember those sounds. But like at home, Daddy had all kinds of music, like jazz. He loved Miles Davis. He loved Sarah Vaughan. Um,
Mm.
was Sonny Stitt, disco because this was the 70s. So and they liked to dance, and they had friends who liked to dance. So the South Soul Orchestra was like something that they played every Christmas, morning, that disco sort of Christmas record. But then it would also be like, but also play Harry Belafonte's Christmas album and
Mm.
Mahalia Jackson's Christmas album. Those were, and Gladys Knight and the Pips' Christmas album. Those are like the Christmas list. But at home it was reggae, of course, but it was just lots of soul music, disco, then later on hip hop. We were teenagers, young teenagers when hip hop started to come out. So we had all the Spoon and G's and the sequences featuring Miss Angie Stone, Funk You Up. We had that We
Oh,
had that single. I can see that record in our basement. My father has thousands of records. So
wow.
everyone came to our house. My parents' friends, my brother and I's friends. Our house was a hub for the enjoyment of music. So I think that that's where my love of wanting to play music and later on sing music, which came much later on, came
Mm.
from the household.
The I think most of us are so used to R&B singers, songwriters coming from the church and learning their craft in that type of environment.
Yeah.
Where did you start to learn you to sing and even playing the piano?
Different ways. I mean, my first instrument was a trumpet. So I
Okay.
played trumpet in all the school bands. I started playing in fourth grade. Like, school band, regular school band, but then later on marching band in high school. And then we had a jazz band, um, which I was involved with, and got very involved with in college, was the jazz band. So I was playing trumpet in all those bands, but then I also started playing classical piano lessons privately, and was studying classical piano lessons my whole childhood, um, and was doing that, and didn't really start to sing. Then I started writing songs about sixth grade, very young. I started just hearing songs in my head and started writing songs. It was kind of like a fun little childhood hobby, trying to emulate, things that I was hearing. Like although I remember Bob Marley intrinsically, like almost in my blood,
Mm.
because it was like the sound of my childhood. I would say that the songwriter that put the most strongest impression on me, like me trying to sort of emulate, was with Stevie Wonder. Like, I remember like teaching myself how to play some Stevie Wonder song on the piano. I was like, how does he put these chords together? And studying the chord structure and how he's putting the chords together and melodies and making these melodies that seem so singable when the chords were quite complex.
Mm.
And I remember that process and then that led to this science of how you put words and melody and chords together, and like, the alchemy of that being like, oh wow, that's songwriting. And by
Mm.
sixth grade is like I was writing my songs, and like I would write them out on like music paper, like because I was studying classical piano, so I was like actually
Okay.
like, and this became like I was a shy kid. I was not an athletic kid, which is why your joke earlier about track and field
The gold medal.
hilariously. I was kind of nerdy. I was a very good academic student, but I was kind of nerdy. I was kind of shy. I was not the fly guy. I was not popular. I was not hip with the other kids at all. Um, and I was more insular, but very empathetic, I think. Like
Mm.
had kind of, I think, a more adult-like and emotional intelligence, I think, than a lot of other kids around me.
Mm.
So playing music and then started writing music gave me this way to sort of, put my feelings, make sense of these feelings of mine, you know?
But then you said did you think you were writing songs or was it poems or were you able to put the music to the songs as well?
I was writing poems also, but I was also
Mm.
writing songs. Like they were very different. Like I would always write, I wrote poems separately. Like my aunt Denise gave me this poetry book called Nikki Giovanni called Cotton Candy on a Rainy Day. And I loved that poetry book very much. So I was writing poetry, but no, this was like writing songs. Because writing poetry is writing poetry and writing songs.
Mm.
Like songwriting is poetic, but poetry is not song.
Mm.
You can't just take a poem and put a song to it. Like, no, songwriting has a certain kind of structure and rhyme scheme. I mean, there are certain songwriters like Joni Mitchell who's more closer to like poetry. She writes
Mm.
in sometimes a more free form way, but songwriting has structure, and especially pop songwriting has structure. It has repetition. It's poetic, but it's not poetry. So I would write poems, but no, this was more like songwriting. I was studying the structure
Wow.
of songwriting.
At that young age.
And as a child, I was doing it on my own. I was just at the home at the piano writing my own songs. Much later in life, I started to meet other songwriters and started to collaborate. Because there were other songwriters who made tracks and they didn't write lyrics and melodies at all. They just had instrumental music.
Mm,
So later on, I learned by, osmosis to go ahead and take somebody's already, created track of music and how to put a lyric and a melody to that. And I think
mm,
that because I understood chord changes from being a pianist, I could actually hear in their tracks what was happening and understand it from like, like even if the tracks didn't feel like a ballad, I could still play it and think of it like as a ballad, if that makes,
okay.
you know what I mean? So,
Okay.
I use my piano as my basis for when I started to write songs, even if I wasn't writing the music.
Which came easier, writing the lyrics to somebody else's music or writing the music to your own lyrics?
I think that they're just different. Like when I write songs by myself, they're more ballads at the piano. But when I've written mid-tempos or up-tempos, I write to people's tracks. Um, so and then it's sometimes it's easier because I wouldn't come up with those kind of beats on my own. So sometimes it's easier in a sense, but then sometimes it's harder too because I like to write quality songs and quality poetry, so to speak.
Mm,
Even if it has a tempo, I don't want to water, basically it's like I don't want to water down the craft of it just to make it danceable. You know what I mean?
mm,
So my goal or my challenge is always to make it feel high craft and high quality, high craft, but then be also danceable as well. So
that,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's a challenge, but when it comes out great, it comes out great because
mm,
I've worked with some amazing beat makers that like they study the beats. They know the science of what is going to get the heads nodding, get people dancing. That's what they do. And they
mm,
focus on that. Just the way that I focus on lyrics and melody and storytelling and metaphor and harmony and vocal arrangements. They study what they do. So then you
mm.
get you get the alchemy of two specialists that are collaborating, meeting in the middle, you know, sometimes it's more than two, like focusing on what they're focusing, like Bacharach and David, you know what I mean? Or Ashford and Simpson, or you know, Simon Garfunkel was not the best. Simon wrote the songs.
No.
Garfunkel sang the songs. But you know what I'm talking about. You get the magic of Tom Bell and Linda Creed out of Philadelphia. You get the magic of two specialists that have an interest in what the other do, but not a competition. You know what I mean?
Well,
Or healthy competition, healthy collaborative. But one pushes the other. Like many producers that I've sat with, even though they were the beat makers, even though I'm not making the beat,
yeah.
I would be like, okay, love that, but this section, the where the chords are going in that section is kind of weird. Or sometimes I'll get on the panel like, what about if we put this chord here? Why don't we use this part of it instead of that part? And vice versa. Sometimes when I'm writing a song to somebody's beat, or they'll be like, that's dope. However, that's too much, or that's not clear, or let's take this part of this and then put in this part here. So like it's a healthy involvement, but not stepping on each other's toes, so to speak.
I guess we could bring up one producer who doesn't get enough credit for his craft is Dave Hall.
Yeah.
How is because he's very does very rare to do you ever see him,
Yes.
and he's known for his work from Michael to Madonna, part of the Untouchables. What was it like working with him on If You Love Me?
Well, it was a big break for me. It was a big break to get invited to just even have a meeting with him. Like by the time I was asked to meet with him by a woman named Cheryl Butler, who worked at Untouchables, who heard some of my music. I went to an ASCAP meeting. I met this woman named Kim Bostic, I think was her name, who worked for Warner Brothers. Kim said, come take a meeting. And then Cheryl Butler was actually at the meeting with Kim. And Kim was like, gave my number to Cheryl. Was like, I heard your songs the other day and I like what you do. I want to take it to the office and see if we can get you with some of our producers. I was like, wow. Because she wasn't even the person I was intending to impress. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? But it kind of ended up getting to her radar. And then she played them for Dave, and Dave was like, Dave heard your songs. And, by this time I didn't have any songs written for anybody.
Oh, so that was your first?
Yeah, these were just demos I did of like, just songs with more up and coming songwriters, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
But then she presented some of his stuff, some of my stuff to him, and he said, okay, Dave wants to meet with you. So I was like, oh my God, Dave wants to meet with me? And so, yes. And then he put me really on the spot. He's like, well, come back tomorrow and I'm gonna have a singer here and we can write with that singer. So I'm like, okay. So it was like being put on the spot in many levels because it's like I didn't know who the singer was. And I didn't really, at that point before that, know how to write with another lyricist. At that
Hmm.
point, I was just either writing my own music and lyrics or writing lyrics with somebody else's music. But now this was going to be like writing with another singer, songwriter, and us working that together. So I didn't know how to do that or how that was going to go. Or nor did I know who the person was, and he didn't tell me. And then I got there, and the person was Phyllis Hyman. She had on a big, huge hat like this, way bigger than this hat. And rest in peace, it's been 30 years since she passed also. So this year was 30 years in July. So then I was really put on the spot twice with just my first professional recording session, writing situation is with Dave Hall. Like when I say professional, I don't mean that it was the first professional one because I've done done professional sessions before, but when I mean like the first producer, like who's really like in the game like that, like he's
Hmm.
like on the charts. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like if you get in good with him, he can take you over you know, over the edge.
Yeah.
So then it was not only just with him, it was with him and then with this legend Phyllis Hyman. So it's like the stakes were like on Gordon Chambers, but I had I had a lifetime of preparation of of music and honing my craft to get ready for a moment like this. You know what I mean? They say about like 10,000 hours, I think.
Hmm.
So that was that first recording session and Dave kind of like put us together, took a chance on putting us together. And then Phyllis was there and she recognized me because I used to sneak into some of her shows because she
What?
had a background singer named Eric Jones who passed away. I think it was Eric Jones. I think it was the last name was Derek. I had met him like socially, and he knew I was a big fan, and like he would sneak me into some. I mean, I was like, very young. I was making hardly any money, like fresh out of college. He would like sneak me in at halftime to like halftime to see the shows. So she actually recognized
She
me.
could, she recognized that. She,
Yes. When I got there, she started cussing her manager out. And guess who's here to write songs with me, with Dave Hall? That kid who's always sneaking in with a wristband to my shows that Eric is always bringing to the show. He's here, supposedly to write songs, help me write songs with Dave Hall. What was this? And
oh,
like, this is like my first, like, serious, like, session, quote unquote. And like, Dave was like, she bugging Gordon. She's upstairs, like she went upstairs to make a call, and he starts looping this beat, and he said, "Do you hear anything? Do you hear anything to this track?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, and he started, "What do you hear?" Because he put me on the spot. I'm like, so it's letting it play for 3, 4 minutes, and the first lyric came to me was, "I can't take this confusion," because she had had a hit song called "Living in Confusion," and at the time there was confusion in the room. There was this confusion as to why was I there, to very much to her disapproval. The
wow.
confusion of me like being there, like being kind of like confused by all this, like what am I supposed to do here? So I just organically took that line and like put a melody to it. And then the chorus that came to me, I just sang the chorus. He said, I like that. He said, go record that right now. While she on the phone, she gonna be on the phone for a while. He had been doing it before, so he knew that, when she had to blow off steam, that could take a process. So he had me just go ahead and record it. Now, I've never recorded a thing with this man. And so he said, I like that. He said, double it real quick. So I just, the hook that I wrote down, by the time she got off the phone cussing her manager out or cussing me out via her manager, whatever, I had laid down 12 tracks.
12.
Yeah, I mean, because when you're in the studio, you double track, like Beyonce, like, sometimes her engineers have done, like podcasts and stuff or interviews where they've talked about like Beyonce might have 250 background tracks on one song. So like, 12 tracks is nothing. Like most R&B records, when you hear them, there's about 12 tracks of background
Oh,
stacks.
sorry. I thought like you recorded 12 songs in the time that
Oh,
she.
no, 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 no,
That's
no.
why I
I meant,
shouted.
I meant, no, I meant
Oh,
12 stacks is what I
okay.
meant.
Oh, no, yeah,
Like
okay.
melody and then the like the first note, the first harmony, the second harmony. So about like
Okay.
12 stacks. I did
Okay.
like 12 stacks,
Okay. I
but
thought.
quickly, like all of this was like within 15 minutes. So she came downstairs, and she's like, what's that? And then she liked it. She was like, and I was kind of imitating her voice a bit, the texture of her voice. And she loved it. And she was like, what is that? Where did that come from? And Dave was like, he wrote it while you up there on the phone. He came up with this. Well, while you up there beefing, he's writing. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? So he's, and she said, well, you wrote that fast? I said, yeah, it came to me. And she said, who are you? Blah, blah, blah. Where are you from? And how did you write that fast? And no, you must have had it before you came. I said, no. And so then she sat down and then she started to build on what I was talking about and some of the storyline of what was going on in her life. And so sort of tell me stories of, what she wanted to explore. And I took some of the storylines and some of the lyrics that she was coming up with. It's more story than lyrics,
Mm,
but story that I was putting into lyric format and then did the demo, sang the demo first, and then she got in there and Phyllis is an amazing singer. Like
mm.
once I did the demo, showed, then she heard it a couple times and then she went up in there and just laid that vocal out. I mean, Phyllis was a serious vocalist. I mean, it was quite a thing to that she ended up sort of being the first star recording artist that I would work with because I got to see what great singing in the studio really is about.
Mm,
I mean, when I say that, like Phyllis didn't, you know, she didn't do parts of songs. She would learn it, and learn the melodies. I sang it first and then just do the whole take. And I mean, all the feeling of the whole song. Like by the time she got ready to lay it down, you understood exactly emotionally, what the story she was telling. And she sat in the booth. She didn't like recording booths, so she sat down with us. She didn't like to record in faraway booths. She liked to sit in the same control room and sat down, which is hard. It's much harder to sing sitting down. Now, granted, I've seen this woman perform many times because her person used to sneak me in. So I used to seeing her stand up with full command. She was 6'2" and know that she could deliver like that. But then to like, it's another thing is like when I'm sitting here with somebody I idolized. I mean, my parents had many of her records. I for a school trip, we in high school we were taken to see Sophisticated Ladies, which she was in on Broadway. So I'm seeing one of my idols up close and personal, but also take an interest in with me and who I am and what I'm doing. But I'm also seeing her work at her craft at a master level. But I'm also seeing Dave Hall be a master producer
mm,
of like knowing how to get an artist to focus, bring in a songwriter, making sure that as a producer, there's all the pieces of talent that you assemble, instinctively knowing what to put with what, who to put with what, knowing, having an instinct that this could work, but also generating the energy
mm.
through your leadership and time efficiently. Like we weren't in there all night long. We were there for maybe like 3 hours with a song done.
Wow.
And then she was like, then she asked, could she take my number? And then she called me. She got right back to me. And then she asked me, could she bring me to Barry Eastman's house? And I said, yes, you can. He was also another name that I had grown up idolizing from all of his work with Freddie Jackson and, you know, Melissa Morgan and, all the artists he had worked with. So I knew exactly who she was. So she was like fairy godmother. And then, of course, Dave and I ended up writing If You Love Me for Brownstone, If the Mood is Right for Jade, The Final Goodbye for Usher, Still Be Loving You for a Group and Damage. That was a big hit, a really big hit in the UK.
Mm.
Dave and I worked on many, many projects together. And then Phyllis introduced me to Barry Eastman, and Barry and I ended up writing for many, 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 many artists, including the Grammy-winning Anita Baker collaboration, I Apologize, and the Grammy-nominated Missing You, which was, of course, from the film Set It Off, Brandy to Me, A Gladys Knight, and Chaka Khan. And Dave and I, of course, co-wrote with Nikki from Brownstone, If You Love Me, which was also Grammy nominated. So Phyllis, Dave, Barry, that was all in that
Mm.
period of time, a period that what took me from like my little teenage high school. It was a dream. I used to read Word Up magazines. Those three, one ascendant, two living legends, kind of took me up a notch, and I'm
Mm.
forever grateful. Forever grateful.
Oh, I think because I moved to America in '92 and to go to college in Alabama, but I didn't know
Which
Phyllis
college?
Selma, Concordia College in Selma,
Got you.
Selma, Alabama. Yes, it was a historically black college, which sadly closed down 4 years ago. But so Phyllis wasn't didn't we she wasn't as popular say in the UK or in Nigeria. So I didn't know much about her until I moved to the States, and then I think she passed not too long after I moved over.
Yeah.
And but when you see her interviews, she's very direct.
No,
She did look. I remember her talking to, I think it was either Donnie Simpson, saying that men are intimidated by her. And as I'm wondering about this young kid, you in front of her,
oh
she's
my
yelling
gosh.
upstairs. Were you not, you could, you just seem as if it was natural. I just write my song, but you weren't intimidated and you weren't starstruck and just, or you just said, I'll just put it aside
I
and
was
just work.
all of it. I was all of those emotions and more. I was completely intimidated by her. Completely intimidated. She was very intimidating and tall and big. And by that time I met her in the 90s, she was much heavier. She put on quite a bit of weight. So
Okay.
she was big and she wore big clothes and big hats and big shoulder pads, bigger than life. You know what I mean? Brassy and sassy and all the things,
Wow.
but also really direct in her love too,
Mm.
and in her support for people, and her support of people. Really loyal, really direct. And when I say direct, like if she wanted to know you and wanted to work with you, but also wanted to befriend you, she was going to be direct about it and call you and and have you be a part of her life and want to be a part of yours. Phyllis called my mother with me, you know what I mean? After I had a car accident, she's get your
Oh,
mother on. I mean, we became friends,
wow.
and real friends, where I invited her to events and she came and she invited me to events and I went with her and um, we talked, about life. And the odyssey at the time that I knew her, my career started to get busier as a songwriter, and I was still working at Essence because after college I lived at home in Teaneck, but I worked for Essence magazine
Oh.
from 1990 to 1997. So Phyllis even at one point said, Gordon, she said, let me tell you something. She said, when your music calls come to your job, be very careful, about the inner office politics. She said, you can give people my number and I'll be secretary for you. She said, because I answered the phone at home, CPI, which is Command Performance Thing. She said, I can start to say CPI chamber music and take calls for you and sort of be your secretary. And
What?
she meant it. She said, because I'm sure, people sometimes, record executives were calling me at work. And she was very concerned. I mean, that's the kind of personal interest she took in those that her spirit took to, and those people that she came to know and love. Um, and Phyllis taught me that icons are vulnerable. You know, artists are human people. They have their fragilities, their vulnerabilities, their fears, their hopes, their loves, their concerns. She was very direct, and what, even warnings about stay away from certain things. Make sure you read your contracts. Make sure you have good lawyers that you can trust to review even the smallest things. Make sure you vet people. That's big. And she said, before you agree to things, make sure you vet it. She would tell me, she said, make sure, she said, remember, you can tell people, can I get back to you? You know what I mean? And take your time before you just say yes to things. She talked about, nonprofits before you say yes, make sure the nonprofit is really what it says it is. Just life lessons that I came to really value and put in place later on in life. But I think she took to me and like an auntie and wanted to pour into me. I had no idea she was going to go. I had no idea that she had, suicidal attempts before she passed. I had no idea.
Mm.
So I think at that particular time, as I look back on it now, maybe she knew she may not be here long, but perhaps she also met somebody that she believed in and that she wanted to leave some imprint and leave some impact on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's and I think it was hard for us to hear because today we talk about suicidal thoughts and mental health and stress and but I don't think, 30 years ago it was especially within the Black community something that we could understand. Look how beautiful you are, look how much money you're making, look at your style. Why should you have any problems and stuff? I do wonder as a therapist if, because you talk about her being direct, and I'm thinking, well, that sounds like somebody who might have ADHD. It's very, it can be direct and sort of personality not the easiest to connect with, but and then they can be attaching and stuff. So, and I wonder if there's neurodiversity which wasn't discovered, and then people might just see a part and not really know who she really was and stuff. But you seem like you could see through the facade and everything and just see her.
I saw, I was in awe, you know. I really was in awe. It was surreal, that this lady became sort of Auntie Phyllis. It was really quite surreal. Um, so a lot of times it was like, you know, wow. Um, but later on in life, I had friends who tr passed away. Um, at young ages, I had friends who have had different struggles with their mental constitution at times, and have reached out. And even before I met Phyllis, I had a close friend in high school who had written a song about who was murdered, in when we were in high school students, Danielle Morton. Um, it's been 40 years this year since she passed. Um, so I don't know. I think maybe there was something in me that she could feel,
Mm.
that she could. relate to and be real with. Um, and when she passed, I felt guilty
Oh.
that, which I think is a natural, reaction when somebody takes their own life. You feel guilty, like, should I have done more? Should I have been more available? I didn't feel like I could have stopped necessarily what was the fate, but I felt, damn, I wish I had spent more time. Um, and I just was hoping that I had been a good friend, and and I hope that she knew how grateful I was. And I remember feeling those emotions. I remember going to the funeral, the day of her funeral. It was pouring raining that day. And I wasn't in the inner circles like that to get invited like that. Um, I heard it on the radio that they said that, she was it was a public funeral. It was at St. Peter's Church, which is a church where when a lot of great jazz musicians pass away, that's where they have their memorials. And I just would say, I gotta go. And I ran over there in a cab, and it was crowded and just mayhem, people trying to get in. And I remember seeing Roberta Flack, and Roberta Flack saw me and grabbed my hand. And was telling the security we're packed, and she said, he's coming with me. And she grabbed my hand and she said, just stay with me. And I sat with Roberta. I mean, we were squeezed tight, but Roberta insisted that I sit with her. And she held my hand the whole service. And I, people told me after the service that Phyllis had told them about me, and had said that I was very talented and somebody that she took closeness to. And some of those people afterwards told me afterwards, they said, Gordon, she had a special love for you. And we didn't know how much you knew, but we want you to know that she had a special appreciation, a special love, and for you, and a belief in you. And that was how that was. Wow, I haven't thought about that day, the day of her funeral. I haven't thought about that in such a long time, that particular moment. And it's interesting because this year was Roberta's service, which I also went to. And then a week later was Angie Stone's funeral service. Angie and I co-wrote No More Rain in This Cloud
Mm.
together. And those funerals were back to back. So sometimes, God just makes a way for you to know some incredible people.
Mm.
Uh, and you don't know how long you're going to have them. You don't know how your fates will intertwine. You just don't know.
Mm.
But it's so important to live, to love, and to advocate. I would say one lesson I learned from her is to, advocate for people's talent. I've met a lot of talented people, talented young people, young and younger, especially my work as a solo artist, which I started making my solo records later on. After about 10 years strong in the writing, producing lane, I decided to start making my own solo records. And along that journey, I started to meet a lot of young, really talented songwriter producers and people I just took under my wing because I just met them and just thought that their talent was fabulous.
Mm.
Claude Kelly, who's gone on to write he has a huge podcast, you know,
Oh,
yeah,
we sound crazy and something
yes,
York,
you know,
something
Claude
York. Yeah.
first one of his, I think his first published song ever was a song that he wrote on my second solo album called Violins. and I met him in Troy Taylor's, um, another great producer that I've worked with, a good friend. We wrote for the Isley Brothers. Look at how life came full circle. We ended up writing a song together, Troy and I, called "Just Came Here to Chill" for the Isley Brothers. And I was like, when at that session, I was like, I've been chasing you since I was 20 years old. We used to ride our bikes as kids looking for the Isleys match, these big gates and barricades around it, So, but Troy always had a lot of talent around him. So I met a young Claude Kelly in Troy's basement. I said, I want to record this song. And that was Claude's first published song.
Wow.
Um, my friend Daniel Jones, who passed away a couple of years ago, his first recording credit was on one of my solo albums. So I've met these talented, brilliant songwriters, who I first started co-writing with them or recording their songs on my solo albums when I first started my solo artist journey, and also talented, brilliantly talented musicians and musical directors. So just the way Phyllis and Dave and Barry poured into me, I've lived life pouring into others as a tribute to how I was poured into,
Yeah.
and yeah, and I'm very
Wow.
proud of that.
Mm.
And I'm very grateful, that my experiences of mentorship were positive. These days you have so many, all these scandals and all these stories and all the
Mm.
craziness. I'm I'm grateful that you know, my experiences were quite, for the most part, quite good, so that I could want to have in my heart space to be a big brother and a mentor to others. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's business. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's really fascinating to hear, and especially when you the start of the story, she could recognize you from sneaking in to a show
Yes.
and getting upset about that, to really having such a special bond for you. It's like it's never where you start, it's how you finish. That is fascinating. I was expecting you to say that the artist that Dave brought in was Nikki, because I didn't realize that that you and Dave started with Phyllis before you did
Yes.
Brownstone.
Yes.
Um,
That was before, yeah.
the thing she told you about
But after,
contract.
but
Oh,
but
sorry.
after the Phyllis session, Dave and I would just write songs on our own. So we would
Okay.
just write songs, pitch songs to people, and we pitched that song to I don't know who he had pitched it to, but he pitched it to several people. But they Nikki became interested in it, and then she did some changes to it, made some additions to it. Then they did their own demo of it, and then they played back their additions to it. They sent it back to me, and then we all got together in New York and then did those recording sessions of in New York with Dave. Yeah.
Did when you guys were recording, I know you did If You Love Me and is it Half of You?
Yes.
Did you didn't meet Michael during those recording sessions or anything? It was just you and the girls.
No, but Michael called one day. He actually called. I was in a meeting. Was it, where was I? I was meeting with somebody at MJ. I can't remember. I may have been in a meeting. I can't remember if it was at a recording session or at a meeting with somebody at MJJ. I can't remember. But one day when I was there at his label, I was either at a studio or at a label for for MJJ. He called and and said, um hi Gordon, I can't talk long. I'm on my plane, but great song. Really, really great song. Bye. And then he poofed off. That was literally. But by that time, "If You Love Me" was on the radio. I think we were working on "Half of You" because we recorded that later on. So "If You Love Me" was already on the radio. And remember, if you remember on the album, "Half of You" is what ends the album. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
so we recorded that later. So "If You Love Me" was already rising on the charts, and he was on the phone with somebody at the label who actually wanted, you know, patched me in to say, so he could say thank you. And then the conversation was so brief, but it was very genuine, and and then he was gone. Yeah.
Wow. Was that starstruck as well? Just the fact that you knew your name and he
Yeah. Of course it was, of course, absolutely. Absolutely.
Did when when you, Nikki, and Dave were producing and finishing up that If You Love Me, did you have a sense that yeah, this is going to be a 90s classic?
Not at all. And I was mad the whole session. I was
Why?
angry the whole time. Um, because when I wrote the song, the first version of it, I wrote it much more quietly. Like I've recorded it on my second solo album, um, my Love Stories album. I recorded it, and it's closer to the way I kind of heard it or felt it. And I sing it live all the time. Like I sing it live in my own shows or just at open mics. It's such an easy song to like teach at an open
Mm.
mic. So I sing it closer to the way I heard it, I guess.
Mm.
Because I didn't intend it to be like this woman's anthem. It was just a song about love and communication,
So
relationship.
that's-
You know what I mean? So when I first heard the demo that they did, I was like, why are they screaming? Like it's so loud. It's so big. And so when we're in the studio, like they're stacking their voice, they're stacking their vocals, and they're stacking and stacking and stacking. I'm like, Dave, isn't this enough? And Dave's like, that's the way they sing. Leave it alone. And then Dave decided to take the drums out of the first verse. Because the demo has the drums the whole way through that I sang. So then in the studio, Dave decides to take the first verse out. I mean, to take the drums out of the first verse. And so Nikki was having a hard time following the timing because there's no click. It's like, you know, and she's having a hard time catching the tempo because she, like me, had been used to it with the drums. So it was taking quite a while. And I mean, this was a session after night because at this time I'm still working at Essence.
Oh
So
my
I had to
goodness.
go to work like the next day. And like this verse is taking like a long time. So I'm like, Dave, just put the drums back on. And he said, no. And he said, Gordon, people need to hear these words. That's what he said. I remember him yelling at me like, leave it alone. You do the arranging and the writing. Let me work on the producing because people need to hear these words. That's what he said. And he insisted on the verse being drumless so that you would listen to
Mm.
the gravitas, so to speak, of the lyrics and the nakedness of her beautiful voice. Nikki's a great singer,
Yeah, yeah.
great, you know, the clarity and the strength and the vulnerability of her opening that, the way she sang it, it just gives you chills to this day when you hear it over that melancholy chord changes. It was really affecting. Like, I mean, it's riveting. You know what I mean? And then by the time that beat drops, it's like by the time the beat drops, it's epic.
Mm.
So that was all his vision as a producer and I remember Nikki and I had a friendly fire discussion when, because she switched the words around where she wanted to say it to come earlier in the chorus. I said, well, and I said, but why does it need to go there? She said, because women need men to say it. You know what I mean? And so it was a little bit of like a feminist, like, like I realized, oh, this is becoming like a women's anthem type thing. Like but that's beautiful. Like that's what you want in a song. Like as a
Mm.
songwriter, you want an artist to hear a song and own it, and
Mm.
feel like they can sing it from their own life experience, their own lived experiences. You want them to put their life, their belief, and their thing in it. You don't want somebody to sing it casually.
Mm.
Yes, as a songwriter, you may want them to honor the melody. You want if you've written the melody and the lyrics, you want them to hear it and sing it in a certain kind of, integrity. But you want them to breathe some fire
Mm.
into the interpretation of it. That's what's going to make it, like, I mean, this is something Burt Bacharach has talked about many times. Um, that like when Dion sang his melodies, that there are many people who recorded Burt Bacharach's catalog, but there
Mm.
was something about the way Dion owned it, the
Mm.
nuances of the writing that made it. She catapulted every intentionality that he had as a composer and Hal David has as a lyricist. She got it and understood it and owned it.
Mm.
Like I think I read that like I don't know, Alfie had been recorded like I don't know like 20 or 30 times before Dion did it, but hers became the signature. So
Mm.
that was one of those experiences where, like, when we got to the studio, Nikki was hearing something. She was breathing something into that vocal that was naked. And even the vocals, the background vocals were bigger. And the production was going to be way more epic in the arrangement. And I was just like, what the hell is But that thing came out and that thing just raced up the charts. And they were right. They had it was real collaboration where everybody had something they heard, something that they were advocating for, and it was beautiful, like friendly fire. And it's become this classic record. It
What
was
did
it
it
was
teach?
it was the top airplayed was the top airplayed song of any song in 1990. And it was the top airplayed recorded song of 1994 of an R&B airplay out of anything of everything.
Wow. But
Yeah.
what did that teach you, that process going forward as a songwriter, then also as a producer?
Stand up for what you believe in, but be open. You know what I mean? Um, be open, to the magic of the moment. Have a
Mm.
perspective and advocate for your perspective, but be open. Let the
Mm.
magic happen.
Yeah. I think, one of the things we had so many different girl groups in the 90s, but Brownstone stood out because unlike so In Vogue had their harmonies and soft harmonies with Dawn and the rest. But as you said, Brownstone, it was tall, strong women with big
Yes.
voices,
Yeah.
and you knew they can go soft, but when they get ready to lift it up, it was very distinct and different.
From
And
Phyllis to Brownstone, right?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also fascinating that Dave. Um, and that, as I said, he doesn't get enough credit as a major R&B producer, of a producer at all,
Yeah.
because he's not in your videos and he's not singing and stuff,
Yeah.
and he's always in the
He keeps
background,
a very low,
low profile. Yeah.
even when we worked together, I was at his house all the time working. Like Dave never went to like industry parties. He had his small crew and team of people, his assistant, his and engineers. I bumped into some of the guys he worked with. One of his engineers, Paul, I hadn't seen him in years. He had a very small crew of people that stayed close to him, but he was never one for the spotlight, not one for the limelight. He was just kind of a music nerd, really genius, like, kind of guy who was really just into his music. That's just what he was into, you know?
Yeah, yeah, still is. Still is
Yeah.
low pro. I've been trying to speak to Dave for the past 5 years, but he's low profile.
I celebrate him. Like when I do
Yeah.
interviews, Barry Eastman also very similarly, like he's never was one for the gloss and the floss, really more about the craft.
Mm.
There are certain people who are, you know, just like they say singers, there are certain people who are like writers, and there's certain people who's like producers. Like, and thank you for having me like on when you called me to do this. I'm like, wait a minute, I know that show. Like that show goes viral and like that like the big dogs, like, and he wants me.
No, 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 no,
So
no.
I was like, because I think of myself as like a writer's writer. I don't think of myself as like, like, but so like I'm just really happy and proud to be here because I've watched your show and it's amazing. So thank
Yeah.
you.
No, I appreciate the fact that you made time. The song that when I interviewed Nikki, that I really loved, that I said to her that if Adele had sang it, it would have been the record of the year in the Grammys, and that's Half of You.
Oh wow. Oh, you interviewed Nikki. Oh, cool.
Yeah, I interviewed her, and I told her that Half of You would have been, if it was sung by Adele, it would have been record of the year because you could feel it. I could hear you on the piano and singing alongside her, and I could feel. And I said, and I liked the fact it was stripped back. It wasn't
Yeah.
all overproduced, but I
Yeah.
could feel the emotion and I can hear the lyrics and the story. And I wondered if that was released, would it have gotten any love from black radio? Um, and maybe that's probably why, but it was probably to me the most powerful song on the album.
Thank you.
How did that song come about?
Accidentally, like we were in the studio doing something else, and I think I just had like was just like doodling around on the piano, and she's like, "Oh, I like that," and I have these lyrics, and like let me like we just it was like we were doing it, just kind of playing around, like during when like something else was happening in the other room, like it was that casually like that, and then she kind of called me back, like it's just like we said on the record, like we're wrapping up the album, but remember those lyrics and those chords we were playing around in New York? And I was like, yeah. And she said, like, let's try to finish that up. It was like literally just we told the story on the record just because that's literally what happened. Yeah.
Wow. Did the and the labels, when they listen to it, do they think, "Oh, this is a song they just said good, we just put on the album"? It's not a sense of, "Well, we could
They
release
loved
this."
it. They loved it. Jerry loved it. Jerry Greenberg loved it. And that's why it closes out the album. And then we just did the thank yous at the end. It just they loved it. It sounded like who they were. They sounded like friends who love to sing together, love to harmonize, you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
I I remember speaking with Daryl Simmons, and I said, and they were he reminded me the story of when they wrote another sad love song, and how many ways, and love should have brought you home last night, and they presented it to Anita Baker,
Mhm.
and she says, no, no, why not the girl who's singing it? She sounds good. Why don't you let her have the songs? And
Mhm.
hence that was Tony Braxton.
Sure.
And then we didn't hear from Anita for 2 years. And then she comes out with I Apologize.
Well, she had Body and Soul was the first single from
Oh
that
yeah,
album.
okay, yeah, body and yeah, but I think Apologize is probably I can still see her sitting on the chair as she's
Yes.
singing it. But it's the it's the fact that she's singing to her husband or partner and saying, "Yeah, my bad." It's very rare for women to do that. It's
Very rare.
mostly, it was always the men in the 90s that would say,
Yeah.
"Sorry, baby, can I
Sorry.
come home? One more chance, forgive me."
Oh,
So
yeah.
to have a woman sing and say, "I apologize," um, I wonder, was it written from a male's point of view to her, or was it a sense of, yeah, actually, I think probably that's why it struck a chord for us, is that it's very uncommon for women to apologize in
Yeah.
songs. How did
Well,
that come about?
I mean, it's people have asked me over the years many times, like, what was in your mind with I apologize? Like, who were you apologizing to when you wrote it? I said, no. I was thinking about apologies I felt I was owed. That was my, you know, that was
Wow.
what was in my really, truly. You know what I mean? Like, so but how that came about, that was also very done very last minute, similarly to how like half of you was done. Like Barry and Anita had pretty much finished the album. She was coming to New York that weekend to master it, as a matter of fact. Um, but Barry and I were writing together. At this point, we just started to write together like sometimes once or twice a week, just developing a catalog of songs to pitch to other people.
Mm.
Um, because Barry was always having projects, that he needed songs for. And he was pretty much done with that album. But he said, Gordon, there's one idea. This was after a while of him trusting me, as a song, our process, and him, trusting in me and us developing a sound, a teamwork. He said, there's one unfinished idea that Anita and I started messing around with, um, one day, but we never finished, but we said that we would keep it in the back of our minds for the next album. And he said, what is it? He said, it's this thing called I Apologize. And it was like the chord pattern, and it was like he played me like this tape of Anita going, I apologize. Oh, yes. Oh. It wasn't any lyrics. It was just a vibe and a mood and the
Mm.
word I apologize. But it was haunting with the chord changes. And he said, do you think you can do something with this? I said, oh, yes, I can. And I'm like, this is the big break. Like, this is the big break. And because the work I did with Phyllis didn't come out until after she passed, by the way.
Oh.
So this was before, when we were working on Phyllis' album, but waiting for it to come out. So this was a big opportunity, and he fleshed out the track of it, gave it to me, and the whole thing just came to me. Like the whole thing, the storyline of her calling the operator.
Yeah, right. This is
I just thought of like, I thought of it just came to me like a story like that sometimes how it's easier to talk to a stranger
mm,
about something really vulnerable than
mm.
it is to somebody you're close to.
Yeah, like Samaritans or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've noticed like I've seen Black women sometimes that have never known each other, but like they just like can get on the bus and they're like you think that they're friends, but shared experience. I just
Yeah.
had this thought of like Anita like calling this another black woman out there, girl, let me tell you. And then I just kind of fleshed it out from there. And I was really wanting it to feel like a classic jazz standard because I love jazz and
Mm.
Daddy loved Sarah Vaughan growing up. Like especially in the bridge, I apologize for I was unkind and I wish that I could go back in time, rewrite my lines, erase the goodbyes, and rewrite my lines. But come rain or come shine, I'm gonna do right this time. Come rain or come shine, I'm gonna love you like nobody's loved you. Come rain or shine. That's a Johnny Mercer tune, Come Rain or Shine, that all the Sarah and Ella and all of them have all sang that song. So I was kind of mentally kind of tapping into Anita's
Mm.
jazz sensibilities with the lyric choices and the chords, and that's what I was tapping into. So we did this last minute demo. I had to rush up there after work. He had to rush it because this is way before computers and MP3s and all of this. He had to like rush it to FedEx, send it to her in Detroit in FedEx because he wanted her to get it before she came to New York. He said, he had a strategy. He said, if I send this to her now, hey, just came up with this, something we can, and he was a businessman. Like this something maybe, by the way, I finished that thing that we were thinking about for the next album. Here's something you can wrote a handwritten note. Here's something you can check out, on the plane, blah, blah, blah. I think it came out great. It's something we can do for the next album. He had a strategy. So she got it, she listened to it, came to New York to master it, to do the mastering. He had an intuition, Nita's known to be very perfectionistic, that the mastering process would take 2 days. So what he did was on the first day of mastering, he knew an engineer upstairs in the same studio where part of it was, and he said, Anita, since we're going to be, mastering for 2 days, why don't you just throw down while it's fresh in your mind, vocal to that song? She threw down the vocal. And he said, and I wasn't there. He said the vocal was fabulous, was amazing. Um, and then he said, okay, we'll just keep this in the, blah, blah, blah for, next time. We'll have it done and we'll, whatever. Then he went back down to the mastering, but he told the engineer to go ahead and mix it. He said, just mix this. And then the next day and the second day of mastering, he played it for her. He said, I have something to play for you. And he said, what? And he played her the final mix of what the engineer had just mixed, and she loved it. And that's why you hear my background vocals on it, because on that album, she sang on the prior albums, she had other background singers, but on that particular album, Rhythm of Love, I think she sang mostly all the backgrounds herself. But I'm the only other voice you hear on that whole album was,
Mm.
singing the background. So that's why it was just like that, because she just sang it to that. And she
Wow.
loved it. He loved it. And then they turned it into the record company. The next day, they mastered it into the album. And now the record company had known of this album, had been preparing to like, market it because Body and Soul is already on the radio at this time now.
Mm.
So they get the finished copy. They hear this, what song is this? And it sounded radio, it sounded R&B radio because Body and Soul was more, it's like a waltz. It was more, mysteriously jazzy,
Mm.
classically Anita Baker, because Anita's like just does these things that nobody else can do. Like she's almost Sade like. She has a sound
Mm. Mm.
that like something that ordinarily might not be commercial at all. It works because it's vintage her.
Mm.
But that was even less, that was even more left of centerist because of the tempo. But then the execs, got this record and just had like this fourth, like a standard radio friendly groove, and it sounded like Anita, but it sounded different. It sounded fresh. It sounded different, than things she'd done before. And they loved it. And they're like, we are sending this to radio now.
Wow.
And they rushed the promotion teams rushed that single to radio, rushed it to radio. And like by the end of the week, it was being played all over the country because
Yeah.
radio was like, oh, we're going to add this. And then they ended up, I think they actually, once they heard, I think they ended up rushing the release of the album too, because they felt they had a hit on their hands. And that's how that came to be.
Did it surprise you how, I mean,
Yes, yes. Shock. Complete shock. Oh, you
yeah.
you have to remember that I'm a kid from New Jersey. I grew up, I didn't know anybody in the business. No nepotism. I don't have any relatives in the music business.
Mm.
I just grew up loving music, playing music, loving music, parents having dance parties and family friends coming over. I just came from this like music loving family and just started to pursue this just out of love for it. And then the next thing I have like these records on the radio, like it was surreal to me. And I had a job. I had to go to work.
Yeah, okay. I'll get back to the essence thing, but I think with
During all of this time, I am going to work every day.
no, I guess
Because
with
I'm
all this,
Jamaican. And they told me you have to have two jobs.
you have to have two, sometimes three.
Yes. You know?
Um, yeah, I think for a lot of us who grew up with Rapture of Love and Giving the Best That I Got, um, and then she took a time out before coming up with this with the album. Um, when the 90s was really hitting with a lot of strong songs, to just see Anita singing this very haunting song, it was like, I need to get that album.
Mhm.
It was like, oh, it really brought her back into, the conversation, even with a younger generation who probably knew her from when our parents were buying her, but it's like, no, this is stuff that we had. And the fact that this was almost like it almost didn't get the album, if
Yeah.
not the with his
It almost
thinking.
didn't make it.
Did she? How did she feel? Did you know if she felt like, oh, whoa, this was just completed? Why is that being pushed ahead of the other songs we spent time with?
I think she loved it. I don't think she would have recorded it if she didn't love it. She loved it. she loved it, and Barry loved it, and she trusted Barry. Barry was her producer, and
Okay.
he had a vision, and there was trust, you know.
But
And
she
she
knew you.
no, I never met her before. I
Oh,
haven't met her.
so
No,
she didn't know who wrote it and she didn't know whose
he
background
told
was.
her, but I didn't meet her till after, you know. I think I wasn't there when she recorded. I came by. He called me to come by to the mastering studio the next day, and I said hello. But no, but then I got to know her a bit after that, because she was singing in concerts and stuff like that, and I'd go to some of the shows and stuff like that. But no, no.
Okay, okay. Um, why were you still at Essence when you were writing hit songs during the day?
I had a job. I had insurance.
um,
I had a job. At this time, it's like, I don't know if this music thing was going to work out like that. You know what I mean? It just like, it could have been a fluke. It could have been like one year in my life, like one great year in my life that could have come and gone. I really just didn't know what was going to happen. So I went to work. I had my job. So did Keith Sweat. Keith Sweat, in his interviews, he's talked about how like he had a job, when he's first broken it. I think he worked on Wall Street.
yeah.
Job. I worked at S till August 10th of 1997. I had a job.
What were you doing at Essence?
I was the entertainment editor of Essence. I had a very important job.
Well, entertainment, that's Essence is entertainment. Well, that's all I knew.
Well, yeah, but
And
Essence,
fashion.
yeah, that was one part. I mean, Essence did fashion. We did contemporary living, which was like home stuff. We did
Okay, okay.
travel. We did, um, poetry. We did many things, but I had about 5 to 6 pages that were my pages that I edited, which were the entertainment, and entertainment was film, music, theater, visual art, and then most of the cover stories were, you know, were entertainment.
Entertainment.
I
And this,
interviewed I interviewed like Tony Braxton. I wrote a cover story for Tony Braxton. Like, so I had my job and I was very integral in the team at Essence when Essence was in its peak. I mean, like that was the year when we first like started the Essence Music Festival. I helped was
wow,
the team that helped choose the talent lineup for the very first Essence Music Festival.
wow.
I was like people knew me as Mr. Essence.
Not the songwriter.
No, well, it's like I was kind of like Mr. Essence that was writing on the side. Like it took years before that flipped. You know what I
Okay.
mean? But I went to work, I was working. I mean, sometimes I was tired as hell because I might have been in the studio all night, literally. But I went to work and I loved my job. I
Okay.
loved my job. I really,
Wow.
and I didn't want to leave. I loved my job. I was very loyal to my job. I'm still close to my former coworkers, still to this day. Um, and I loved my job, and I loved having a job. Was I tired? Yes, I was exhausted because the politics of both things were a lot. But I loved having a job. I loved having insurance.
Okay.
I loved like there was a built-in prestige and built-in network that I had at my disposal because of the Essence affiliation. You know what I mean? Like, and I knew everybody. I knew everybody in entertainment because I was
Oh.
known as the guy from Essence.
But could that help you get writing gigs? Or
No, because if you, no, it did not. Because you still had to submit the songs to the A&R departments, which was a different department. Like through the job at Essence, I was dealing with the publicity departments. So,
okay,
no,
okay.
it did not. But I was in rooms at parties and social situations where I would hear about things that were happening. So it put me in a certain mix, but no, it did not necessarily. Nobody was going to record a song that Gordon James wrote because he works at Essence. No.
Oh, but you could have had the ear of Sylvia Rhone and say, "Hey, I can write a song for Yolanda Adams. Look what I did for Anita, and look what I did for."
Sure. But Sylvia Rhone was not going to put a song of mine on an album just because she thought that that was going to help her get somebody on the cover of Essence. It did not work like that.
Oh no, no, not on the cover, but just as a Like, oh, I didn't realize you wrote songs, Gordon. Let's send them across. Like
Yeah,
Clive listens
it
to.
was
Yeah.
it was respectable. I was very well respected. There was intersectionality between both situations, absolutely, and a lot of respect. And I mean, so much so that even Andre Harrell, rest in peace, actually wanted to recruit me to go and work there as an A&R person. And I didn't really envision myself as an A&R person. He said, "Yeah, I want you to work on some of that." I'll never forget the job interviews. He said, "I want you over here because I got the guys who can do the hip hop stuff." This is when he became the president of Motown.
Okay.
After Uptown, he said, "But I need you over here. I want, to work on some of the other classier, projects." He said, "I need you to bring that essence over here. Bring that essence over here." You know what I mean? Like, so there was adjacencies of how to get in certain rooms, but they were still pretty separate,
Yeah.
situations. But I stayed. I mean, I had opportunities, very lucrative opportunities to leave Essence, but was I loved my job. I was loyal. It was a great job. I loved my coworkers. I loved the Essence mission. I mean, you know, I, it was it was more than money. It was like there are values that
Mm,
I believed in that the magazine, working at the magazine, espoused about community service and um leadership and integrity and
mm,
decency that I saw as role models in the people I worked with at Essence that were far different than what I saw in
in the
the
music industry.
of the music industry. If you said, and I live my life in allegiancy, is that a word? In allegiance to
Mm.
those values that I saw at Essence.
Wow.
When I went to work at Essence after college, my father was furious at me. He said,
What?
because I was being paid a paltry salary.
Okay.
But I mean, I had just gone to this very expensive Ivy League college
Yeah,
and I was
Brown.
scholarship. Daddy was like, "Why do you want to work there?" And he said it in his Jamaican, I got that, but I felt that that was where I was supposed to be spiritually, that there were lessons that I was supposed to learn there. And they became lessons that I would teach later
Mm,
on, in my lifetime in various different ways. And people have talked to me, obviously a lot of times when I'm in doing longer interviews like this, the platform is through music. And and I've won my fair share of music awards, but I'm also extremely proud of community service awards that I've won from many, many, many organizations. And I think that that sense of um, service to the Black community of
mm,
America is very important to me, still is.
mm.
Being a role model in a certain kind of way of what similarly to what I saw at
Yeah.
20, because I graduated at 20 years old. So it was a situation I saw that and I wanted to be a part of that, as long as I could. It became after a while, by 1997, it was like just beginning too much. And Susan called me into a meeting. She said, "Gordon, I think it's time for you to go, and to go ahead and do your music thing and and um and she said, "You've done great work here, and I could keep you here, but your passion isn't in it as it used to be. But you'd still do amazing." She was honest. She said, "You'd still do great work here, but your passion isn't in it like it used to be. But you've hired some great people who I think have that passion for it. I think it's time for you to train them to be your successor, and it's time for you to go and do your music." And I was like, "Oh shit, have I been fired?" But it was so spiritual. Have I been fired in the spirit? I didn't know what it was, but it was it was it was maternal. It was like us, you know, a mother who knows when it's time for their child to go so that their child can grow, you know? And Susan was like a spiritual mother to me, then and now in many ways. And so, and she said, and we as a company will continue to support you. And they did. After I left, did some consultancy work for Essence. I wrote some freelance stuff for Essence. I performed at the Essence Music Festival. And those values stayed in me in terms of how I move and how I live my life and people I've hired and just creating an environment like what I was exposed to. So I think it was fate and it was destiny in terms of the life I wanted to live.
Could you have left? I
Hold on
mean,
one second. I gotta use the bathroom. Let's just hold on. Hold on. So 1 second. Hold on.
yes,
All right.
yes. I think the question I had was, could you have left Essence after If You Love Me or even after I Apologize financially? But did you feel that working there would help ground you so you didn't get carried away with the with working within the industry and music industry?
Yes, by the time I left Essence, I didn't need my Essence salary anymore. No, I was making enough money through music by that time that I was able to go. Um, I don't know. Had Susan not called me in, I don't know, I might have still been working there to this day. I really might not have. I still might have been there. Not
Wow.
now, but I might not have gone.
Yeah.
Um, I was afraid to, kind of go on my own. I really was scared.
Mm.
I was used to having a certain rhythm of life, of getting up every day, having a certain schedule, going to work, having people to have lunch with, having
Ah.
meetings, having community,
Mm.
a rhythm. And I remember and then I had a lot of friends in other industries that we would meet for lunch or we'd meet after work. I was invited to all the best parties of New York, and I mean all. So I had my party buddies like, hey, like where are we going tonight? And they just, you know, they knew Gordon come nighttime, come call that man, he popping, you know what I mean? And my buddies, like, I was the man, you know what I mean? And so I was afraid to give all of that up, those perks. I didn't want to give it up.
Yeah.
And I remember the first 3 days after I got home, I had so much stuff to do at my house because I had bought a condo that I was never in it. Never. Because after work, I'd be out at the parties or, doing the stuff that I had to do or our recording sessions. And on weekends, I would go to the studios live to record with writers. So I had this condo I was never in. So when I got home for those first 3 days after leaving, I had all this stuff to do. Like I had to fix this was broken and that was broken. And it was 3 days of attending to my residents. And then I got up, I'm like, oh shit. I remember it was that fourth day I don't have anything to do today. I don't have anything to do today. There's nothing on my to-do list. And it felt so weird. And I called one of my best friends at the time, Lloyd. Lloyd Boston is his name. He works in fashion. At the time he was working at Tommy Hilfiger, which was right around the corner. And I said, Lloyd, I, I am having a very strange day today. I don't have anything to do. And he intuitively said, Gordon, I know what you need. Real friend. He said, I'm going to take off work tomorrow. I'm going to call a personal day and we're going to go to and get your home office. And he took the day off from work. I'll never forget it. And we went to Staples and got my desk and got my this and got my stuff and and I set up a home office in my apartment. I had a second bedroom and I hung my photos and my my plaques and stuff like in my office. That's not in this house. That's another place that a condo that I owned that I lived in before this. And it felt like an office. He said, that's what you need. And he was so right. And once I did that, I felt like I'm in business for myself now.
Mm.
I'm Gordon Chambers and I'm in the Gordon Chambers business. And then after a while, I got used to this new rhythm. And then it became okay
Mm.
to like if I wanted to go to a movie matinee on Wednesday at 1 o'clock, it was okay. I could do that too. I was like, that's okay too. I'd worked really hard at a young
Mm.
age. Um, you know, and I had something to show for it, and I was proud of myself. And I was okay, and I realized that I could do that too. And then I went somewhere and I bumped into L.A. Reid. And L.A. Reid, he said, "What are you doing these days?" I said, "I left." I said, "I just left Essence." He said, "Wow, you left Essence?" He said, because he knew me. We had profiled L.A. Reid for Essence. He said, "You left?"
Okay.
Yes. And he said, I said, "Yeah." He said, "Wow, wow, great timing. Wow." He said, "Because I'm starting a new publishing company called Hitco,
Oh,
and
Hitler.
I want to meet with you." I said, "Okay." He said, "What's happening with your publishers?" I said, "My publishing deal with Warner Chappell just ended, actually, because I was signed to Prince's publishing company, Paisley Park, which was a subdivision of Warner Chappell."
Mm.
And he said, "Wow." So he said, "Let's talk." So he had me meet him at the Four Seasons for breakfast. I was like, breakfast at the Four Seasons. But I was like, but I can do this now. I have to go to work at Essence. I can take a breakfast meeting with him. And we met, and he explained that he was starting a new publishing company, and he wanted it to be small, like a Motown of writers. Like he said, I wanted to be very boutique, very particular, but really qualitative. And he invited me to be his first writer. And he said, just have your lawyer call my lawyer. And they did the deal very quickly. I mean, and my lawyer was like, "Gordon, this is very strange. Deals like this don't usually happen this quickly, but he really wants to sign you." And I said, and he said, "This is just strange, but he's made a very good offer, a very fair deal. Like, this is a good deal. Like, this is good. I don't know why this is happening. This is happening." I said, "Okay." So once we did the deal, then LA started to call me all the time. So I'm like, I've just left my job, and why is LA calling me like it's amazing, and I admire, of course, his work, but it just was not like I didn't live in Atlanta. Like I wasn't on his mix like that. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But he started to call me and was like, because he hadn't even fully staffed Hitco yet.
Okay.
And he said, "Gordon, I'm thinking about two different people for the positions. Can you meet with both of them for me and tell me what you think?" It's like, why is L.A. Reid asking me these questions? But I did what he asked of me. Then he started to do press about Hicko, and he started to ask me, "Can you talk to Billboard about that you're signing to Hicko and what it's going to be? Can you?" Then he had me do some press about the rollout, and then I remember asking him like 2 years later, like when there was a Hicko Christmas party. I said, "Ellie, I always want to ask you this because we were at the Hicko Christmas party, and he asked me to say the prayer, and I was just thinking, why me?" And he said, "Gordon, sit here." And I was not as close to him as us, but he said, "Sit here," and I sat with him. He said, "Gordon, please do the prayer for us." I just was like, and then I asked him why that night. I said, "Why me?" He said, "Gordon, I knew that if you came, others would come. I knew the respect that many other writers have for you in this business. And that's why I wanted you to be a part of the building of this company. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much." And he said that to me. And once again, I did not know. I really had no idea. This is about 90, because I signed to Hicko 98. I left Essence in 97, so this is shortly thereafter. And so this is like late 90s, maybe early 2000s. Just had no idea
Mm,
that I was somebody like L.A. Reid, who I idolized. Who didn't idolize L.A. Reid? And
mm,
who didn't?
yeah.
Had no idea that he valued me
Mm,
um, in that way. Um, and valued me not just musically, but valued my person, my integrity, um my values in that way. I had no idea.
mm.
And so I joined Hitco and was with Hitco for 10 years uh,
Wow.
as a songwriter, signed to Hitco at 7. And it was about the fifth year into Hitco when I decided that I wanted to do my first solo album. And Shakir Stewart, rest in peace, who was at first a intern at Hitco, who then became the president of Hitco.
Wow.
Sutton had hired him as an intern at first. And I knew him. I used to go pick him up at the airport as an intern. Then he became the president of Hitco. Then he left and became senior vice president of Def Jam right alongside Berkeley
Really?
directly. So I saw his whole rise and was like a big brother to him, during his early rise at those days. Um, I told Shakir that I wanted to make a solo record, and Shakir um, arranged some seed money through Hitco for me to go in the studio and do it. And I said, and um, and I'll never forget because by this time, this is the early 2000s when music is starting to shift a little bit.
Mm.
Like Shakir had discovered, I remember Shakir playing me the demo of Yeah for
Usher and
the demo when it first came in.
mm,
So this is like Atlanta. So this is early 2000s. So now the sound of music is shifting. It's not the heyday of the 90s R&B when I was a
mm,
specialist. But so here I am feeling like I'm the becoming the OG of the
mm,
gang. And then, Shakir's younger than me. But I went to Shakir and told him that I wanted to do this. He said, "Okay, what do you need?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "What do you need? What do how do you want to do this?" And he arranged the seed money for me to go into the studio for
mm,
a week with all the musicians that I wanted to hire and cut those first 8 songs. And then some of those songs were on the first two or three solo albums, and then I did some other songs with Troy Taylor. And between that became the sound of the first Introducing Gordon James and Love Stories albums that I released independently. So there was really nothing so much because these were independent releases. There was nothing so much for Shakir or Hitco so much so to gain. He
mm.
just wanted, and I'll never forget he said this to me. I said, Shakir, you would do that for me? He said, yeah. And he was real busy at the time. And I said to him, I said, why? He said, because you're Gordon Chambers. And if this is what you want to do, you deserve to do it the way you want to do it. I'll never, ever forget that that man said that.
Mm.
And he said it just like that. Whew. Wow. Hmm. So as early 2000s was a time of shifting sounds, shifting relationships. Now I'm sort of questioning my relevance. Um, is my sound the sound? I was having a lot of success in the early 2000s in the UK. I wrote some big records in the UK that went pop.
Mm.
Three pop top 15 or top 20 records. And
Mm.
some wrote for some of the biggest pop artists on in the UK at that time in the early 2000s because there was a company called Windswept that was had a partnership with Hitco. So once I signed to Hitco, the Windswept people was like, "We love you. We love your songs. And you come over to London and write with us for British artists or write with some British." And like one of the songs that I wrote for Carl Thomas, My Valentine, one of my favorite songs of all my songs that's been published, that was written with a British songwriter in UK, but we pitched it back here. So they became like I was having a lot of success
Mm.
um, in the UK at this time. But inside, I was also questioning, well, it's like I'm in my early 30s now. I've been, in the songwriting game strongly first like 9, 10 years, you know what I mean? But like things were changing. Pitch songs, it wasn't as easy to get placements on songs. I had a song with
Mm.
Mary J. Blige. It was promised to be in the album, then they took it off. Had a song on Tony Braxton I thought was a shoe-in. They took it off the record at the last minute. So there was just different politics, different changes, different sounds, different execs, and really started to question my worth, my um maybe I should have stayed in essence.
Since I was going to say, did you?
All that stuff, and then but I also was having this bug to record a first solo project. Both impulses were at the same time. And I just said, I'm going to go for this. I'm going to do this. And I called my friends, my songwriting buddies, Barry, Troy, Phil Galston, who I wrote One Voice for Brandy and wrote After All Is Said and Done with for Beyonce. Um, and just said, hey guys, this is what I think I want to do. Can I use this song for this project? Everyone said yes. Got a band together, started booking shows, and started working on my first solo record, my first independent solo record, while still at Hitco, in those early 2000s. And then just started this other career, my third Jamaican job, this other um this other expression. And then it became, because I'd always sung. I sung on
Back up.
all the demos of all those records that we talked about, And so I just said, it's time for me to sing.
Wow. Was that
What?
ever a life dream to sing, or was it just
Yeah,
okay?
it was. Not in my childhood, but by college, yes. In college is where I started to sing more and perform.
Mm.
And definitely when I came to New York, like out of college, I wanted to sing. I wanted
Okay.
to be a singer. And I, like was pitching myself to record companies and thought I was going to get a record deal. I thought I could sing. I wanted to be like, I thought why Brian McKnight can do it, why can't I? Or I don't know, whatever the other solo artists at that particular time. So definitely. And I was pitching myself. And it was really, I felt like I was close, but yet so far. Because I knew some of these people and they knew that I was talented. But a lot of times they just didn't, there were politics within their record companies where
Yeah.
they were being pressured to sign and sell more hip hop orientated music,
Yeah.
or they just didn't see me as an artist. Maybe
Mm.
they respected my talent and thought I could sing and thought I was talented, but they saw me as one thing. And that
Mm.
was hurtful. That was painful
Yeah.
to feel like I was close, but yet so far. But that desire was also in me. I'm like, but I don't want to live my life where I thought, but what if I just never go for it? What if I'd never do it? And so I just got on the phone and just started calling people, writers, producers, engineers that I met, but also graphic designers, art directors, photographers,
Wow.
stylists, people that I met through my Essence life,
Yeah.
to put all of those relationships together and just say, listen, guys, I think I want to do a solo. Everyone helped me. Everybody, you know. And then I just started making my CDs, guerrilla style, getting on the road, booking gigs. Some
Wow.
gigs, some gigs were great, like some like, playing the Essence Music Festival and opening for, other artists like Patti LaBelle and Isleys and people like that. Some gigs were very humble, you know what I mean? And I had to learn from, all of it. I had to learn what it's been like, you could like be on this great situation where you can like open for somebody and play in front of like, 10,000 people, but then, you're the opening act and being treated terribly. You know what I mean? Being paid terribly, all of that stuff, dealing with promoters,
Mm.
but also like, guerrilla style, like going to like people's houses during record parties, like learning how to be on the other side of it, learning how to be the artist and all that entailed. And then it was like I couldn't hide anymore behind the song credit, like on an album. It's like now it's me, and do they like me? You know what I mean? Not just do they like the music, but do they like me? And do I like me? You
Mm.
know? And then do I like me based on whether I think they like me? So all that stuff started to unearth itself psychologically as I went on the solo artist journey. And it was hard.
I can imagine.
It was hard. There were some glorious, amazing moments, but there were also times when I would just sit in my apartment and just cry. Why is this so hard? If I've made a record that is this good,
Ah.
why is it so hard and so political to get it on the radio? And why, if I can't get on the radio, if I can't perform here because I'm not on the radio enough, like, why? And it was hard. And it was like, and why did I do this? Why did I think that I needed to do this? It was hard. And there were times it was great. There'd be times I'd be on gigs and I remember one time I opened for Patty for this convention and Patty came early. Now I'd written songs for Patty before. She brought her whole team to see me. She said, I wanted y'all to see him perform. He's a friend of mine. Never,
What?
you know what I mean? She came earlier because usually if you're headlining, you don't need to come later. So there were times that it was really amazing. Like I feel like I got the respect of my artist peers, people I'd grown up idolizing with. But then there were other times when I was like, this is a hard grind.
Yeah.
And there were times that, that there were other independent R&B artists, independent soul artists that their music was more considered by the independent soul tastemakers, so to speak, considered more organic sounding than mine. Mine was considered almost too commercial for a certain kind of organic independent soul tastemaker circuit. So I wasn't all the way being embraced by, you know what I mean? It was just hard. It just opened up this different Pandora's box of opportunities, calamities, soul searching, all of it. You know what I mean? But it was what I wanted to do, and I got to record some songs that I always believed in, songs that would have been harder to pitch to other artists. They were not as commercial or not as, maybe not as, but they meant something to me. And I
Mm.
got a chance to sing them from the heart. I got a chance to record with so many beautiful artist friends, Layla Hathaway, Lettucey, Eric Roberson, Mike Phillips, the saxophone player, the great trumpet player, Roy Hargrove, rest in peace. That's what I called in the middle of the session, Roy, come over here, please. You know, and lay something down for me. I mean, and when I called these artist friends of mine to collaborate, they came and they worked hard. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm just gonna come in and just like sing a line and be out. Like, no, they came to work and to give me that respect of collaboration. Um and then also those are some of the singers that I sang with and other up and coming singers like a friend of mine, Steph Reed, Carol Riddick, who is also quite well known and respected in business because she does a lot of touring with Will Downing and does a background singer. She sang background with Patti LaBelle, who sang on my records. Other up and coming Candace Cole, Sarah Divine, voices, New York singers that I love and wanted to
Mm.
just record with. but also just amazing um, players that have played on my records. Shedrick Mitchell, who's played in Aretha's band and Whitney's band for years now, is Maxwell's musical director. Ray Angry, who's a member of the Roots, who played keyboard on my records. I mean, when sometimes when I look at the credits of the musicians who played on my Lamont McCain, who played bass, who's Anthony Hamilton's, musical director. Just the cats who played in my band and the producers.
Mm.
Um, you know, not just some of the luminaries, but a newer, more up and coming, amazing producers. Darren Dorsey, an amazing producer that worked on my records. So, just getting a chance to sort of collaborate with well-known artist friends, talents, and then also be sort of, if you will, a discoverer of talent. So that became the joy of being able to collaborate differently. And then whilst being on the road as a performer, then I started meeting a lot of other up and coming artists who started requesting me to vocal coach them.
Mm.
And then that became this other accidental new career of being of a coach. But being that I've been involved as a songwriter, I understand songs and song structure, and when a singer sings a song, the impact that it can make if they do it with integrity and delivery and substance, you know?
Mm.
And then also having performed, I understand how to perform, how to communicate with an audience, how to breathe, how to, take care of your voice on the road. All my skill sets now I bring to, coach singers. And I coach all kinds of singers. I coach very up and coming singers, children that parents want to get, some musical lessons in their kids to education and help build their self-esteem,
Mm.
to recording artists like Tyla. When she first came to America to do her first 5 television shows, I
Oh, I
coached her.
think I remember seeing you. Was that the Tonight Show or something?
Yeah, some five the big tour was and several of the night TV shows. Yeah, and Jimmy and then the ball drop in New York City. 5 of her television appearances. So and many other recording artists for other labels too. So I've ventured into this other business, so to speak, but also just another thing that I really love to do, of pouring into the next generation that way musically. So it's been a circuitous
Yes.
and beautiful journey.
But are you still put it, prioritizing your singing career, or is there a lost art of getting recording art producers and songwriters from the 90s still making music today? Because it almost feels as if, well, we're not getting 200,000 from the label to record this song, so um, we'll find something else to do.
Right. Um, I am still doing all of it and open to doing all of it. You know
Mm.
what I mean? I just do different things at different times of it all. But I still write, I still produce, I still coach, I still perform. It's not, it's in it's there are times in my life I'm like, when I prioritize it, like I'm going to focus on this now, and then I'm going to focus on this. It's not as pre-mapped out now. It's more like I'm just more open to it. And I really love all of it.
Mhm.
I love music. I mean, I've also done public speaking things. Like I've done symposiums on Donny Hathaway, for the Apollo. I've taught songwriting courses for Berkeley, and for the Apollo, I've done like day-long symposiums on songwriters. I love music. Um,
Mm.
as we talked about in the very beginning, like I was a music fan first.
Mm.
I was a child that grew up in a musical household. So that came first. And that has never left me. So I love to go to performances and see a great show. So writing the song, producing the song, singing the song, coaching the song, it's all connected to my love of music and my wanting to support the continuance of greatness in music.
Mm. There are a few songs I just wanted to rush through just to get your thoughts on them.
Sure.
You've got Angie Stone, and I interviewed Angie probably a couple of months before she sadly passed. And and she was very clear to make sure we understood. I understood that she was the first, group, female hip hop group to record stuff. Um, but then we knew about her. Um, oh, I can't remember the name of the group she was in. It was her with this um,
Sequence.
sequence. No, not sequence. Was sequence? No, not the. It was the hip hop group. Then she did the group with the two white singers.
Oh, Vertical Hold. Yeah.
Vertical Hold, yes. And
Yeah.
then before she had her stuff, um, what was it like? And especially, it was such a massive song, No More Rain in the Clouds. What was that like just connecting with Angie? Because you said earlier that you grew up in the East Coast where Angie's, sequence were known. So now you're
Yeah.
seeing her that what was that first initial?
Amazing. Like I first met Angie when she was in Vertical Hold.
Okay.
Um, so I knew her in the New York, circles and New York scene then. Um, then she was working on that first solo album, and Peter Edge signed her to Arista. But I knew Peter from when he was at Warner, when he had signed Michelle and Cello. He was a buddy of mine. And
Needed.
um, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just like, wow, because she came out with that went with that with just out the blue like
So
that.
he signed her to Arista, and Angie was she was a songwriter. She wrote a lot of her own songs, and I was very happy that she got signed to Arista. I was like, wow, this is amazing for her first solo project, because I'd known her, over the years in different, capacities of her artistry. So Peter called me on the phone one day out of the complete blue. Gordon, it's British, very formal. I have a question for you. Are you available, to come and help Angie with something? I said, what is it? He said, she's doing this record, and she's done the song, and we love the song, but Clive doesn't like the bridge. And she's two different bridges to it, and Clive doesn't care for the bridge. Do you think you can go to it and listen to it and maybe see if you hear a bridge for this, because we this is like the last thing we need to finish for the album. Again, the last thing. So I go to the studio. So Peter calls me, and I know Angie, and I go in there, and she's like, "Child, I'm so glad it's you that they call." And Angie, I'll turn in this record about 3, 4 times, and you know how she talks. This child, what you hear? Let me tell you, play this. And so she spent, like, just like Phyllis, she spent the first few minutes talking about the, how they give me her fever and blah 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 blah. So I listened to what she had done, and she played me the bridge. Um and the bridge part is the part that's not the Gladys Knight sample. And then I just wrote what came to me. Spring is coming and winter's gone, my love. But don't look around for me, child. That's why I put it in there, because Angie, childless. And I put that in there because I'll be gone. Not afraid, because the seasons have changed. I'm going to count my blessings and just follow the sun, because you see, my sunshine has come. That was what came to me for the bridge. Now, let me tell you how God is. Whew, how there's no accidents. After Angie passed, shockingly, I loved Angie Stone. I loved her so much. what a warm, real, loving, sisterly, encouraging, God-fearing, God-loving woman. Thank you, Angie,
Mm.
for your legacy. And when she passed, they all these, Norma Raines had to play, of course, on the radio a lot, and all these Instagram posts. But many of the posts would have the
Mm.
bridge, you know, those words of the bridge itself. On her funeral program, there's a whole page of the funeral program with just the bridge. And I was like, when I went to her funeral, I was opening up the page at the minute and I saw that page and I just cried.
Mm.
I said, wow, that part of the song ended up telling, or I don't know, saying something about where this ascendancy, this unexpected ascendancy, has led us to help heal, you know, not afraid because the seasons have changed. I'm going to count my blessings and just follow the sun because you see my sunshine has come.
Mm.
It was wow. It was powerful.
Wow.
But that's how that session was. It was a sort of accidental assignment. But it ended up being a big hit record.
Yeah.
And and um and something that bonded us together.
Mm. Yes. I mean, yeah, definitely. You tapped into the whole neo soul era of Angie Stone. Um, My Love, Whitney Houston featuring Bobby Brown.
My love is like an open sky. Written written for Tony Braxton.
Oh, was that the one that they promised to be on the
Oh,
album? And okay.
no, there's a beautiful song I wrote with the track masters called My Melody. Oh, I nearly had a nervous breakdown when they told me that song wasn't going to go on the album. No, this was a different song. I just wrote this one to pitch to Tony Braxton because Joey Arbogé, who was at Arista, was A&Ring both Aretha and Tony and Whitney. So I wrote that to pitch to him for Tony. I just thought it was a Tony swag. My love is like an open sky. I thought it had a Tony kind of swag to it.
Mm.
Um, but Joey was like, I like this for Whitney. I said, really? I said, some other songs for Whitney. Please keep that one for Tony. I have the Whitney songs for you. And so I started presenting him songs that I thought were much more pop. But
Mm.
then he said, but no, Whitney's making a soul record this time. We want Ellie and Whitney want to make more of a soulful record. So this is soulful. This fits her. I like this for her. I said, really? I said, I'm just surprised. He
Mm.
said, no, I like this for her. And he said, but we should add something to it. I want to add some element to it. What can we add to it? And so it was my idea. I said, why don't we make it a duo with Bobby Brown? And by that time, Bobby hadn't sung in years. He hadn't been on, he was, he hadn't recorded on anything. He said, you think so? I said, yeah. I said, Whitney and Bobby making it my love, like making it an anthem of love. I said, yeah. And he said, Gordon, you think you can get that vocal out of Bobby? I said, oh, yes, I can. I can do that. I said, yeah. He said, okay, I'll pitch it. And they loved it. They loved the idea. And we recorded Bobby's vocal first. And Whitney spent a lot of time with me, with Bob, because she knew Bobby was rusty and was nervous. And she was so loving to him and to me to make sure that his vocal came out great. It was very important that we made sure that he felt really great about his vocal. Um, and I love the way he sounded, even the coldest Georgia rain. I loved, and they were living in Atlanta. I think that's the thing that made Joey love that song is even the coldest Georgia rain. He said it's very Atlanta, and they were living in Atlanta. And we recorded. We had a ball recording that song. We had so much fun with
Wow.
Whitney and Bobby. That scene of us recording that song was actually in Whitney's documentary. There's a scene of the movie, and it just brings back beautiful memories of them and a fun friendship with both of them. And they were so much fun together. We hung out many, many, many times, both in, at work and play. And I just loved them both, they at that particular time when they were still in married and still in love, it did reflect the warmth that they had for each other. They had a great love for each other, you know.
Yeah, but wasn't it challenging to because I mean it was well documented that they were very even in both their biopics that it was challenging, with the drugs and the alcohol and stuff to really get a good vocal from both of them. That seems a
It
lot more
took,
challenging than the way you're describing it. So,
it took time.
okay.
With Bobby, there were several sessions. I mean, Whitney did not have a budget. You know what I mean? Like it was not like, you know, she's like, I can come to the studio when I want to, and I can cancel when I want to. So there was times we're gonna go in tomorrow. No, we're not gonna go in tomorrow. No, we're not gonna, there was times there was a lot of hurry up, wait, a lot of that. Um, but when we got to the studio, we had a great time, and they both worked hard. You know what I mean? They worked hard for Mr. Gordon Chambers. They always call me Gordon Chambers. Whitney always call me Gordon Chambers, Gordon Chambers, Gordon Chambers. He wants his name always.
Okay.
And they came to the studio, and I worked them. I don't play around in the studio. I'm
Okay.
very like I'm fun, but I'm fun, but I have a vision, and I want it. I want what I want, and I'm patient, but I'm going to stay with it so that it is great. And we had a great time. We had a great time, and not just with them, but with Gary, with Pat, with the whole family. With Bobby, Christina came to the sessions.
Oh.
I have beautiful memories with the whole
Mm.
Houston family at that time working on Whitney's records, and Joey. LA wasn't there. But Joey was there with us on all the sessions. And it's just a beautiful time of beautiful, beautiful memories. Still close to the Houston family. They've been
Mm.
through a lot.
Yeah.
And but I have nothing but love for them, and they've showed me nothing but love.
So this is before Clive returned.
Yes, this
Um,
I worked on the two albums, the Just Whitney and the Christmas album, and I worked on three songs. Just Whitney, two. I worked on Things You Say and My Love, and then on the Christmas album, I worked on One Wish, which I wrote with Barry for the Christmas album. So these were the two albums that L.A. Reid A&R. But L.A. Reid was president of the label, but Joey was the A&R person, Joey Arbogé. Yeah.
yeah. I guess it was, yeah, I guess there's I know interviewing Show Shock when they did Heartbreak Hotel,
Yeah.
um, Clive did not want Bobby on the album or any
Uh,
part of it, and he was very strict about that. So I was like, oh, I thought, oh, did Clive change his mind? And I realized this is when he was ousted briefly before he came back
right.
and
He came back for the I Live to You album, yes.
yeah, so and he took the reins. Okay. Yeah, it was as I said, it was I actually did prefer it to Something in Common. I felt it was stripped back and I actually did prefer it to Something in Common, which was from the Bobby album, but I liked it being
Mhm.
Whitney and Bobby parts of it. Um,
Mhm.
One song that people might be surprised of, and it's a pity we don't get these types of, real strong black movies as we did in the 90s. But you did the theme song for Set It Off, and you had you had the Gladys Knight with Chaka Khan, Tamir, who I think probably has one of the greatest vocals ever, and Brandy. Um,
Mhm.
I still remember. I mean, it was a we all watched the movie and the soundtrack. Whose idea was it to get Gladys Knight and Chaka, Tamir and Brandy, and then okay, let's get a song. I mean, how did that project come about?
Well, Sylvia Rhone asked Barry and I to come up with a song for the films. We had a hit, I apologize, did was a hit for them. So she would call us to do, things for her.
Oh,
And
okay.
so
Hey, wait a minute.
at first,
I did say if you get to know Sylvia, couldn't she not say, "Get me a song"? Now you say she
yeah,
did.
she requested it because we had just were coming off the heels
Okay, I
of
apologize.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, so um, she called Barry and Barry called me
Okay.
to ask to write this song. And we had to write it and rewrite it and rewrite it. We had to read like three different versions. Because when you're working on a film, it's not just the A&R people of the record company that have to say yes. There's like the film director. There's more levels of checks and balances, to get the song done. Then they wanted to cast the song. At first, they wanted to have that be done by Lauryn Hill and Roberta Flack, who had just
Oh,
done.
Killing Me Softly kind of.
They wanted two different generations. They always wanted it to be,
Okay.
a multi-generational record.
Mm.
At first, they wanted Lauren and Roberta. And I remember that Roberta was trickier than Lauren, actually, because Roberta had these writers that she was working with that she wanted to get involved in on the writing and make some changes. And Sylvia was like, no, we think this song is a hit the way it is. And so then they didn't do that. And then it became a situation of, well, let's maybe have four voices since there was four characters in the movie. And Mary sang Missing You first. Mary sang the first verse of it first, but she ended up taking her vocal off of it.
What?
She recorded it, but she ended up having change in management, if I recall correctly, and she felt like she was overexposed at the time, so she decided to not to be a part of it. And so
Wow.
at the last minute, there's all these last minute stories. Because Barry and I flew to LA, and the first session was we recorded with Gladys and Timmy in the same day. That was like such an iconic day, just recording with both of them in the same day. Then we did Shaka, you know, and then um at the last minute, they were in this jam, and Sylvia decided to just add Brandy to the song. Brandy was on Sylvia's label, Atlantic,
Okay. Yeah.
and Brandy was added last. But it's Brandy, I believe, that made that record a hit record. The
Okay.
innocence of Brandy's tone and the familiarity of her voice and opening it up like that, um, I believe it was Brandy who made that record a hit record. When people heard Brandy, the innocence of her tone and the pop, the pop recognition of her is she made that record a hit record. I give her the I feel like she brought it home because it went from
Okay.
the innocence of her to, the art. I mean, to me, it's like Gladys's entrance is like what kills me on that record. Like
Yeah, I always remember Gladys' part.
it's
Yeah.
Gladys with the ah. It was, I mean I remember just being in that studio and just like riveted, like Lord have mercy, no, because we get in the studio like hanging out like for the day. And then when she got like ready to like, and she's just regular, she's real cool, like auntie, big sister, whatever. But then like when she gets ready to get like behind the booth, there's this other thing that happened. It was like this avalanche of sound, you know. I was like, oh my God, how's this woman like the one who I just like was like sitting with, like so casually. Like she just gets over there and delivers like all that. And once again, one take, just like Phyllis, like one take. And she knocked it out. I remember recording with Shaka. That was a different session. Shaka was very shy.
Oh, Chaka.
And yeah, and the studio, she's kind of shy, you know, because I was like, she didn't know the song as well,
Okay.
and so like, I was in the studio like behind the booth with Barry, and she's, she kind of knew it a little bit, but like, Barry's like, Gordon, sing it to her through the beats. She said, Gordon, and she's like, Gordon, come up in here and sing the song for me, please. And she orders her to like come in there with the booth with, and like, kind of show her what to do. And like we wanted her to like come in higher than Gladys. Because Shaka's very musical. She was like, but Gladys is owning that thing. So I remember like she's like, but Gladys is my girl, and she didn't want to feel like she was coming. But we
Mm.
like, but no, but we love Gladys, but now we need you to rise it higher in key and frequency. Like us, and then I remember Shaka was she says, "Oh, you want me to do the Shaka thing, huh?" We need the high note. Come on, Shaka, come on. Like, but I had to get in there, like right next to her, and like be on the booth, like right with her. And I'm like thinking, like, when she called me, like, Gordon, can I come in here? I'm like, I remember sitting there, like, I am not getting off of my black butt and standing next to Shaka Khan to sing nothing. I'm not going to do that. Who tells Shaka Khan what to sing? No. And she's like, Gordon. And I think she could tell I was like nervous. And Barry's like, go, go, go. And so I went and I'm like, like it's one thing to like be behind the booth and sort of give direction, but like when you're like right next to like your favorite singer of all time. But she was so cool. She was wonderful. I wasn't there for the Brandy session, but I remember like when I heard Brandy's version, I was like, wow, she brought it home. She got the innocence that made you appreciate all the other voices. But Tamia is the one who sings it live. Um, like if you go to any Tamia show, she sings it. She does Officially Missing You, and she segues it into Missing You, and she delivers it. She has kept that song's legacy
Mm.
alive in concerts. And I'm grateful for Tamia for singing it live and just giving it that kind of love and reverence over the years. Because it's only been performed actually one time in a TV show, which was Gladys, Shaka, and Jennifer Holliday for the Essence Awards, actually. I had
Okay.
left Essence. I wasn't there anymore, but it had been performed for an Essence television show that we used to have called the Essence Awards.
Yeah. I mean, it was I mean, the film was part of black culture and stuff, but yes, I guess it didn't get sung that often. But yeah, I think I've always loved Tamia's voice. The
Yeah.
she has a very distinct way. I love You Put a Move in My Heart. That's
Yeah.
Lady in My Life Part Two. It's because that's my all-time favorite song. So when I hear how the same contemporaries, Quincy Jones and oh, what's his name now? The one who wrote Thriller and Baby Be Mine and Lady in My Life.
Right temperature.
Rod Temperton. So yeah, so that's how having her sing on that,
Yeah.
a powerful. But at this time, were you taking more? As you are writing, are you taking more of the direction in when you were recording these legends?
Um, my taking direction.
Are you giving them direction? Are you
I mean,
producing?
yes. I mean, if I was there, yes. If I was at, I wasn't at all the sessions for every song that I've, um, had recorded. Many of them, but not all.
Mm.
So I'm either taking directions because I sang the demos.
Uh,
If I mean, I didn't sing, and some songs that were recorded by women artists, like Someone Watching Over Me, um, which was recorded by Yolanda Adams beautifully. She sang it so gorgeously. That demo was done by Cheryl Pepsi Riley, um, who's an amazing singer.
mm,
Um, so if I wasn't singing the demo, then very often I was helping vocal produce the demo. So my influence, my imprint was always there, whether I was in the room or not. But when I
Okay.
was in the room, I'm very much hands-on with, I'm not a dictator by any means, but I'm very hands-on with how, um, you know, I want the song sung, but but that's really just to get the melody,
Mm,
the melody. I'm a very melodic songwriter, so I want
mm,
the melody to be the melody.
yeah.
Um, but I'm also a great coach. I think I am. I hope I am. So I can coach people how to bring what they want to bring to it. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And make it, get it together. But like, but I love also those moments where the artist just like someone watching over me, like that vamp, like Yolanda was just like going for it, because that's a long vamp. She's just going and going, and like she's just like doing her thing. And I remember like she's just like I was like, because I'm a big Yolanda fan. I remember in the studio I said, "Okay, Yolanda, love that. Now double yourself. Sing against yourself." Because it's a singer that I've known that she did on the records. So I am watching where a singer is going to take the song and where they hear where it's going and then guiding it, um, or making the idea, trying to make the idea strengthen the idea. Yeah.
mm.
Hmm.
You've got a plaque on top, and that's Brandy.
Yes.
Um, is that it? Was that a seven-time platinum or?
I think that album has sold like, I don't know, it's definitely diamond. I can't, I don't know. I think that Never Say Never album has sold almost 20 million copies. I'm not sure. That's the biggest album I worked on. Um,
I was when I interviewed Rodney, I said, oh, I can't remember now his name now. When Brandy first her first album, oh goodness, I need to remember her name now. He did probably. I want to get down. Let me see his name here because he did all her first album, Keith Crouch.
yes.
He did the majority of the first album, but he was almost absent from Never Say Never. Um, um, was this Sylvia bringing you in after the success of I Apologize? So it's like, okay, we want you to work with us in Warner and give you make sure you put that magic on our artists. So how did that connection come
Um,
through?
I don't know. I mean, I love the first Brandy album that Keith Crouch did.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I love Never Say Never that Rodney did.
Rodney, yeah.
And I love Full Moon. That first single was I can't remember his name who wrote that. Love that song. I love Brandy. I think Brandy's a brand. Like Brandy is dope. Brandy is a brand. So when she works with a producer, her sound and her vocal production, her vocal interpretation, her vocal arrangement is a production in and of itself, no matter who she's working with. So I enjoy Brandy's artistry in all kinds of settings. Um, Brandy, One Voice is a song that I wrote, which is a sort of gospel inspirational kind of song, pop song. Wrote that with Phil Galston, a very pop songwriter who wrote The Sweetest Days and Save the Best for Last for Vanessa Bill Arms.
Mm,
Vanessa
Vanessa Williams.
um he also wrote 5 or 6 songs for Celine Dion. We wrote One Voice together, actually the night that I had that conversation with Susan Taylor about leaving us, and that's the night we first started writing that. He said, Gordon, you're gonna write the big song of your life tonight. And he was right. So we were pitching that song to Celine Dion because he'd written for Beyond
Mm.
before. And that our intention was that was for Celine because it was like a, kind of a world peace kind of, Celine type song and melodically.
Mm.
Celine didn't take it. And Craig Coleman, president of Atlantic Records, who I also went to college with Craig. He was a senior when I was a freshman, but Phil had a very strong relationship with Craig, and he pitched that song to Craig, and Craig said, "I love it." And then Craig, played it, I guess, for Rodney because Rodney was a executive producer on the album, and Rodney greenlighted it as well. And then they hired David Foster to produce it. I mean, I was blown away. I When I heard that recording, I mean, I just cried. I've never cried. Just twice I've cried in my career where I heard someone sing a song of mine and I cried. It
Wow.
was that time when I heard Brandy's version, and another time I wrote a song for Mark Anthony called How Could I? And Mark can sing.
Mm.
That's a singing man. And when I heard Mark's vocal and he held this note really long, it was just so much passion. It just moved me to tears. It was a very melancholy song, also, that particular song, How Could I? But when I heard Brandy's interpretation and I heard that gospel choir, that B.B. Winans, did the arrangements for, and the innocence of Brandy's vocal on this track with this choir behind her and singing this big message, but this hopeful message, but from the perspective like the innocence of a child. I remember I just wept. I just cried. I thought it was the most beautiful thing of mine I had ever heard. I
Wow.
was so honored. David Foster is, I'm such a fan of that man. I mean, he, from the work he did with,
Darren Warren.
I mean, but no, before that, Cheryl Lynn got to be real
Oh, yes, yes, yes,
and
yes. With did he do stuff with Earth, Wind and
and
Fire?
Up to the Light is gone. Yes.
Mm.
But just in terms of pop, how he produced pop, how he's as a pop producer. I'd
Mm.
done a lot of work with a lot of great R&B producers and even some, hip hop producers, but I never really had a song prior to that produced in like proper pop.
Mm.
And I was like, it blew me away, gave me chills. I cried.
Wow.
Can we take a pause? My throat's getting dry. I just want to just have a little cup, very British, have a cup of tea
Yeah,
just
yeah,
before
yeah,
my.
sure, sure, sure. No, I guess just as we put things wrap things up, I just wanted to find out with the state of how music has changed, do you still see writing and producing music as something that you can still do? Or if you're doing that, do you think it will still have the reach it used to back when in the 90s?
Oof, good question. Hard question. I'll say this. I am so glad and so grateful to have participated in the industry when I did
Mm,
in the 90s, because the 90s, music is always talking to the generation before it. You know what I mean? Like the big harmonies that you heard in Brownstone's If You Love Me, that you heard in Missing You, those big hooks, those big choruses. Um, what you're hearing in my love, is you're hearing in me Ashford and Simpson.
mm,
You're hearing in me the staple singers. I'll take you there.
mm,
You're hearing the I threes that the way Bob, you know, used their voices in Bob Marley and the Wailers and the
Mm,
I-Threes. It really could have been said Bob Marley's and the Wailers and the I-Threes.
mm,
You know what I mean? Just the sound, the glorious sound of Rita and Marcia and Judy, you know. You're hearing in my 90s work, which is my breakthrough year in the business, the music of the 70s that I loved as a child. That's what you're
mm,
hearing. That's I heard as a child what I put into the music that I was having a conversation with what inspired me that came
mm,
through me. You know what I mean?
mm.
How could it not? It's similarly in me as a child when I first started to hear music and create music. Um, in my career, I found myself in the 2010s sampled by rappers.
Oh,
It
okay.
was like the craziest thing, like, getting these requests from Tory Lanez who were, sampled Say It, sampled If You Love Me, which became a huge hit, Say It, but also sampled by Bryson Tiller, sampled by Future and Metro, just having this music, but then again, it makes sense
Mm,
because some of those guys, as they've started to come into their craft, were kids in the 90s. So they
mm,
were influenced by what they heard. So music is in conversation with other generations in a beautiful way.
mm,
I'm just glad to have made my mark and my imprint at that particular time because it honors a time of music that informed my time to sort of come into the industry. It informed that sound. Um, in terms of what's the current state of music is
mm,
now, what people are making now, I guess now they're reflecting what the times are now. You know what I mean? The songwriters, the producers are saying what they feel needs to be said of the now, and they're being informed by what they heard as a child, in their childhood.
mm,
So music goes on. It's an energy that keeps on going on. I'm not the most current listener. I don't have my ear the hardest
To the
to the
craft.
streets. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't. You know what I mean? I probably would not be the hot thing of today if I was coming into it that today because
Mm,
I don't sonically gravitate, you know,
mm,
to those sounds or that kind of storytelling in that kind of way. I think I was meant to make music at a certain time.
mm.
I'm so grateful that this music has stood the test of time. This is my 30th year at being on the charts and in the hearts. I'm so grateful. I'm so glad. I had no idea that I would ever sit down with somebody like you for 3 hours about my color. I mean, I would have never known that I would be worthy and would have created work that would be even as interesting to a journalist to want to have a 3 hour conversation. You would never know what it means to me. You would never, ever know. So I'm just glad, I'm just grateful that my songs have had staying power, that they made their mark. I'm so glad that people like yourself don't forget about the OGs and you'll call on myself and the Brian Alexander Morgans in the way that you do, and you honor us and you give us our flowers while we're still here. I'm so grateful. I say thank you for me. I say thank you for them too. You know, and where music is going, we'll see. I'm excited to see where it goes, and I have such appreciation, like I said, for that next generation who look up to me, and tell me the impact that I've made on them. It means, it means the world to me because just like I've had the opportunity to sit with
Phyllis Hyman.
people, the Phyllis Hymans and the Gladys Knights,
Mm.
let them know what they've meant to me. It's you live long enough, the next generation will if you live long enough and you live with enough, you know, life force and decency that you may just have that opportunity for somebody to give you back that flower. What a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I did see when Tyler was performing in the US that you was I thought did Gordon write this the Rain, but I didn't realize it was the vocal production, well the sort of vocal coaching
Yeah.
for her to perform in the
Yeah.
US, and so just to show how you're extending. But I
Yeah,
think
because Tyler is very interesting. Like Tyler grew up, she's much younger. She's young enough to be
yeah.
my daughter.
Mm.
A lot of these artists that are in her age group, they grew up singing more like, doing home recordings that went viral and stuff like so not really having not like me, like where you grew up like performing in a band and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
artist development,
So,
that's
you know what I mean?
missing,
Like
yeah.
so I can translate those experiences when I coach, artists like of her generation into what I knew and what I learned and pass the baton on, so to speak. Yeah.
I see videos of you. There's something that happens where the artists are singing in front of a porch in New York.
Yes.
Is that something you're involved in, or are you just a fan of?
Um, it's something like over the last 4 or 5 years since the pandemic, there's been like these stoop concerts, not just in New York. They have them like in DC. Tweet just did an amazing one. Like Lettucey's done them. Like there are these concerts that are set up on brownstone, well, not
Yeah,
necessarily brown, on stoops
yeah,
of
yeah,
the
like it's
of
little
home.
steps
So
and so, yeah.
I performed on one
Ah,
recently on a friend's stoop, but also I hosted one that was done on my stoop, but that was a hip hop concert. That was a Big Daddy Kane, Salt,
yeah, yeah. I thought that's. I thought you were
and
okay.
my
Is that?
Fanchette. I didn't perform at that one, but I hosted it on my stoop. So I performed in some of them, but I love going to them too. So it's just sort of a block party. It's an organic way of bringing like
Mm,
music performance to like to the streets of New York. Like the people who produce the concerts pull the permit so they can close the street down, and people just come out and like enjoy live music, which in the way that live music is supposed to do, like
yeah.
live music bringing people together and bringing community together.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I did see that, and I said that I was definitely going to ask you, and I think finally, I guess, um, we were celebrating Tyler when she first came out and she was performing. Um, I think being I'm Nigerian heritage, and she's South African, and the dynamics of what happens in South Africa is completely different, say, than Nigeria and the rest of Africa. But it felt unfortunate that she received a backlash from how she described how she's perceived in South Africa. But then what people used that to do was to then talk about, oh, she didn't really sell that many albums. And it is interesting to see how viral success or popularity doesn't seem to translate to album sales as it used to. And it's a very hard balance for some of these artists, new artists releasing music now. Even Sierra released did a lot of promotion, but I don't think her album sold. And it's a really hard thing to see how popularity doesn't necessarily seem to translate to music being bought or streamed and whatnot. Does that still not dread you from thinking of releasing your own music, knowing that it can be a lot of work, but very little
Yeah,
payback?
I mean, I haven't made a record. I haven't made a solo record since 2017 was my last release. I have not made a new solo record. Wow, it's 8 years.
Mhm.
Um, didn't even realize I'm overdue, very overdue. I have not recorded my next solo project, since the new streaming only era, because I was in the CDs
Sí,
era.
sí, sí.
Yes, you're asking a very astute question because I've kind of it's hard for me to still wrap my mind around the fact. So I'm gonna make a record, but there's not gonna be a physical copy of it. And as an independent artist, like you go and you perform and you have something that you can sell and sign and people get a piece of you. Like I won't be able to monetize that. It's a hard
Yeah.
notion for me. With somebody's at my door. I think it's a package. Hold on one second.
Yeah, it's fine.
Sorry.
It's fine.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just have to face the music and get back out there and make my fifth solo album and see how it fares in the streaming era. It's times have changed,
Mm,
It is what it is. Tyla is amazing. She is touring the world, um, giving fantastic concerts. She has a beautiful audience that loves her, and it's an international audience,
mm,
and they love her. And I haven't worked with her in a while, but I'm on call whenever they need me. And I'm really proud of her, of what she's doing, in her own way, with her own style. How she's tapping into the fashion, industry,
mm,
finding her brand and not just, beyond. I think she's thinking smartly for the long haul of not just being pinned into just the music industry, but she's very much in the fashion sort of industry, arguably in the fashion industry. She's made some movies and she's been hosting things. She's thinking, she's thinking big picture, I
mm.
mean, I think a lot of those conversations were small conversations around her that had
Mm.
nothing to do with her, that
Yeah.
people were triggering their own anxieties onto her. I'm proud of her. I'm proud to have helped her unveil herself when she first came to America to perform. I'm very proud of her. I love her dearly,
Mm.
and I'm here for her whenever she needs me, and I'm cheering for her.
Yeah, no, definitely well said. So good. When I finished, I always ask my guests that if you were stuck in an elevator and you had 2 or 3 hours to kill, what would be your favorite movie? What's your like all-time
Oh,
favorite
movie! I thought
movie?
you were gonna say music.
Yeah, no, well, always start with the movie. What's your favorite movie, all-time favorite?
Um, 3 hours, The Godfather.
Okay. Would that be the original one or part two?
Um, Part two.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, okay. The one with both Al Pacino and Robert De Niro in
and
different.
Fredo and the wedding at the beginning and the lake at the end and Vegas and the hearings and it's just I mean I've seen it so many times. It's brilliant,
Yeah, it is definitely.
you
It's
know.
the Yes. Mine is Schind.
Odyssey. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying everyone, and the reason I've been asking this question just to get everyone's taste. Mine is Schindler's List, which might not necessarily seem as, but for me, it's more the story of redemption. A
Yeah.
man sets up for himself to to get rich, and then he then realizes that he's rich by saving lives, and loses his foot. So that I love those types of stories. Favorite song, all-time favorite song that is not your song, but just well, it could be your song, but by any artist, just all-time favorite.
Um, wow. I think Love's in Need of Love Today.
Stevie Wonder. Okay.
Love is in need of love today.
Mm,
Like what he said and the way he said it, it's the urgency of love as an action. This
mm,
world has become so corrosive and so divisive and oh my God, it's like
yeah.
we're all human beings and God made us all. If we would
Mm,
just shine the light that of God in ourselves,
mm.
and return to love, what this world could look so differently,
Yeah,
Love's in need of love today. I think that's it.
yeah, no, definitely. Um, as a songwriter, if you
But then
had,
there's also always, I'll be loving you always. Oh no. I don't know. It's one of, I don't know. They might be a tie.
okay, is that
It might be a tie.
no, it's well, Stevie
But
is
it's definitely that album, it's definitely the Songs in the Key of Life album. That whole damn thing. You had
okay.
like 2 hours to like play one album, like that would be the album for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. Okay. And I was gonna say that as a songwriter yourself, if you were to pick, seven of your favorite songwriters of all times, who would make that list of seven?
Stevie,
Stevie.
Ashford and Simpson, Bacharach and David,
Wow.
um, Bob Marley,
Wow. Okay.
Prince,
Okay.
um,
Two more.
Joni Mitchell is a
Oh.
genius.
Mm.
Um, one more, let me think. Paul Simon's pretty amazing.
Okay. What is very interesting about your list is that you picked from a broad spectrum.
Yeah.
90% of my guests who are songwriters, producers, always
Oh, sorry, Babyface. I'm sorry, Babyface. I'm sorry.
90% of them would always say Babyface and Jimmy and Terry and then Quince Jimmy and Terry and Baby Ellie and Babyface. Those are always like the first two names I'll just automatically go in there and build.
Babyface. Babyface. All right, sorry. I'm sorry. Paul Simon's got to go. Love Paul Simon though, and
Yeah.
I saw a documentary of him recently, and I was like, wow, this man's songs, like he was brilliant because he wrote all this pop folky stuff for like Simon and Garfunkel. He did that
Mm,
and mastered that, but then he like went to South Africa and did their Graceland project. Then
mm,
he went to Brazil and did the Rhythm of the Saints project. Like how he could like, and then he did Mother and Child Reunion like in Jamaica with this reggae. Like how he was able to like take his style of songwriting
mm.
and go into these other cultures and rhythms. I mean, it's just some people, criticized it and said he was a culture vulture, but it's a certain kind of genius that he could
Yeah.
like tell stories in these
Mm,
different cultures and rhythms. I think it's just, I saw a documentary on him recently and I was really impressed.
yeah.
But then there's Lennon and McCartney. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
yesterday,
Yeah, I mean, as I said, yeah, I mean, I was born in
you know,
Liverpool, and the Beatles were, our most famous export. It seems as if
I almost didn't say Lennon and McCartney because I felt it was going to be too obvious.
yeah, no, no,
But
no,
Babyface,
yeah, it feels as if after the 80s, there seemed to have been such a,
Brenda Russell. I love Brenda Russell.
I'll be sure to tell her when I interview her, I think next week or
When he
so.
plays piano in the dark,
Mm.
like the songs, even the songs from The Color Purple, like a blade of corn, like a honeybee, like a waterfall, all a part of me, like the color purple, where did it come from? Now my heart is open. Look what God has done. Ooh. And Le Restaurant. Tea for two, I did it waiting. He left in the room down in the restaurant. She's talking that song, The Restaurant, Brenda Russell. I'm sorry, my list had to be 10.
Yeah, that's fine. It's fine.
I think, can I have all those 10,
Yeah,
please?
you can add them all
I
in there.
love songwriting. I love it so much. Like, my friends are always laughing at me because I'm always quoting song lyrics in conversations.
Yeah, no, I do
I mean,
films, so yeah, I do films.
yeah,
So
I love a song. I love songs. I love lyrics so much. Yeah.
I think what I was just saying was the fact that in I think after the late 80s, the music was seemed a lot less. There were lots of barriers to music. So
Yes.
a Jodie Watley album, if it sounded like Madonna could have sang that on album, it just felt like that. Or you know, Simon and Garfunkel, or George Michael. It felt like it was music we listened to, whether it was the Doobie Brothers or stuff. We'd listen to music. It felt like when we got to the 90s, it was okay. This is New Jack Swing. This is R&B. This is
Exactly.
hip hop, and this is pop rock. And they're on that side, and it was a division. And and then when the divisions came, I don't think songwriting was as the importance of good songwriting and creativity and adventure, like having Paul Simon go around the world and share story.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if I would say they became lazy. It became a let's quickly turn out the hits and get the production. Let the music be the selling point. Forget the lyrics, and that has
Yeah.
seems to have fallen on, and that's a disappointment because I grew up just listening to music, especially in the UK, or even when we went to Nigeria, it was really music, and it just became segregated as we moved on. Because
True.
you, that's why I said you were naming a variety of different artists, writers, which I said, yes, ordinarily I would have agreed with all of that because that
Yeah.
they were telling Bobby McFerrin was not an R&B artist, neither was
Sure.
Tracy Chapman, but they sang, or they created music that we could listen to and appreciate. So yeah, that's been a change. Yes. It has been a journey. This
Yeah.
it is about 1:45 in the morning here.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
yes, yes, yes. But what this was what happens, as I said, when you know the hence I never tell anyone how long this interviews are because the interviews are based on how much time you have. So I'm here, I listen to the story. The editing, it takes its time, but people are
Yeah.
fascinated by the stories. I think you're the first guest who's ever spoken about Phyllis Hyman. But you've also interwoven other things in there, and there are many people that will definitely appreciate the stories, and this is the opportunity just for us to keep preserving and celebrating, yes, as well. Wow. Okay, good. Well, if you do come out with new music, definitely we would love
Yeah.
to have you back in to promote
Definitely.
that and
Thank you.
stuff. Yes.
Thank
Yes, I
you.
appreciate the fact that you took time as well for this.
Yes.
I have to make
Yes.
sure my alarm goes off in 5 hours, so I will put
Okay.
myself to sleep. So,
All
but
right.
I'll keep in touch
Thank you
as
so very much. It was such an honor, and God bless you. And thank you for the cultural preservation that you do with your work. Yes.
I appreciate it. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of Halftime Chat. Please remember to subscribe, share, and comment. But most importantly, why don't you become a member of Halftime Chat? We've got amazing videos, amazing perks, and being able to support the channel. But anyway, thanks for watching. Take care.
I never participated in that kind of.
And somewhere in between.
for even loving us. On which I didn't miss you with.
What was it like growing up?
She's still making an impact on 4 houses down.
I have a couple of pieces.
Trying to get this one and that one.
That works for me, but just for me.
No. Okay.
They don't understand what Jonas Boys and Whitney all spirits.
Play it.
I mean, I love all different genres.